posted on my car thing. Hey, you probably didn't see that because you guys don't check Snapchat.
Snapchat. I check Snapchat. I check your stories.
Chat.
That's about it. Either way, welcome to stream. We do things. We people. There's Caleb and Alex here. I don't know, man.
Spectacular. Pleasure being here, everyone.
I'm ecstatic.
This is my whole life has been leading to this moment. All my trials and all my tribulations throughout my life. There is nowhere I'd rather be than right here and right now in the call with these two idiots about to talk about anime.
I would say the same thing, but I gotta admit, if Skywalker Saga was out, that's probably where I would be.
Come on. Skywalker Saga stream. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Oh, it still comes out. It's the week after Moon Knight. It comes out.
Oh, fuck! That's soon as fuck.
Yeah.
No, that's like not next week, but sort of next week.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting how soon Moon Knight is.
The only reason I haven't is because I have a drawing that I need to post of Moon Knight on Patreon.
It's in 10 days.
Yeah. Alright, he's become some weird animal. Either way, and animals. I said
This
animals.
is Sunday, is it?
Animals for beginners. Alright, that's the title. Animals for beginners.
Wednesday, 6 p.m. I'll probably have it overnight. I can watch it.
Are we ready for the animals for beginners?
Absolutely.
Animals for beginners. I know. I feel like this is one of the weirdest.
Number one is chameleon.
Oh,
we love our chameleon. I haven't actually got your stream up. Hang on.
I feel like humans are a bit like the chameleon. They can wear a bunch of masks and change clothes.
Yeah.
And
second one is the
themselves.
cuttlefish.
Yeah, true. The cuttlefish are pretty good.
The cuttlefish are pretty fucking good. I mean,
They're pretty scary as well.
They're almost voted out for the lionfish, but the cuttlefish tend to also change colors. They're very hypnotic.
Fuck the lionfish. Cuttlefish all the way.
Exactly. Methinks. The third one is the manatee, the fucking lawnmowers of the ocean. We absolutely love the manatee. There's nothing we love more. Second is not lemurs, very specifically King Julian from Madagascar.
Yep.
Every other lemur, specifically, they're on the list only because of
the only one who created a foot fetish after him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I'm running out of curious animals. The next one is the tarsier. It's like if a horse tried to be an elephant, and I love it. I love them. They fucking prattle around and they their own fucking life. I forgot the name of them already.
What about the owlbear?
The owlbear. Sixth one is the owlbear. Gotta have some mythical love in there. It's like if a bear had like feathers and a beak, and also could crack its neck all directions and could beat your ass.
Did the owlbear even come from real mythology, or was it just some guy made up?
I think some guy
in more recent times.
Okay, no, basically, I'll get to the other three animals in a second. So basically, this guy got like $2 like plastic creation like toys from some $2 store.
Yeah.
They were really poorly made animals, and he got one, and he got a bunch. He like a pack, and he made creatures. His interpretation of these creatures. One of them seemed like a fucking really poorly made bear with like a beak, and he's like, that looks like a fucking owl. And the early interpretation of the owl bear didn't even look like an owl. It was like a fucking eagle head.
On a bear.
On a bear, yeah. Early owlbear designs are wild. I love the new ones because it's just an owl head, and I like owls. That's a very quick explanation. Of
Okay.
Number 7 on the list is the Triceratops. They're not dead, and you cannot prove otherwise. Just because you haven't found all of them dead. They're flying in the sky, right?
They're high as a kite.
Exactly. Speaking of kites, number 8, the kite. They're sentient, and you cannot prove otherwise. Right? That's number 8 on animals for beginners. And number 9, guess what number 9 is, everyone?
Chairs.
That's fucking correct. Number 9 is chairs. They are alive. You sit on them, they know you're sitting on them, and they love it. And there's probably one in your house. That's the correct one for beginners. That's 9 animals for beginners. That was 9, right?
Yeah. Anyway, back into what the episode should be about before it got
That's a
derailed
good
with
thing, too.
animals for beginners. Which, let's do an episode of animals for beginners.
Okay, hang on. It was chameleons, cuttlefish, not lionfish, manatees, tapirs, owlbears, triceratops. I'm missing something.
I don't know.
Chair
Did we,
and
say, did
kite.
we mention
Chairs
chair
and kite.
kite? There was one more. That's
Did you only say 8?
did we? Oh, King Julian.
Oh, that's the
Ah,
one.
yes, King Julian.
Oh,
Alright, that's all. Yep. Okay,
Right.
that's my list.
either way. I mean, anime for beginners. It's one of those things where I feel like it's so weird to be a beginner and getting into something so different. And at the end of the day, I always felt like it depends on the person you are and the reasons you're getting into something. Like for me, a lot of the time, it was more like I was very familiar with a lot of strange shit and I watched a lot of strange shit. So it was easy for me to get more familiar with those anime tropes that you might see and just get used to them, which took a little bit, but still I felt a little bit easier where I see other people that just can't get used to them and like outwardly refusing anime when not every anime is the same. It's like me picking up a TV show saying, this is bad, every other TV show is bad, I'm walking away. Or every movie's bad. Or the Batman. Oh, it was a bad movie. Blah.
It's like watching
Every other
Big Bang
movie's
Theory
bad.
and refusing to watch Breaking Bad.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely a much more personalised thing. If someone comes up to me, I'm thinking, okay, you're my preference. I wouldn't want to push my agenda on anyone. Watch One Piece either way. But, like, what do you like? Alex, what do you like? Like, if Alex came up to
Men.
me and asked for romance, I'm telling him to watch my love story.
I like
But
men.
but that's only because I would not recommend that to anyone else. It's only because I know this man. And the main character
of my
is
love
him.
story is my boy. I would die for him.
He is him.
He is my everything.
And Alex knew prior to watching it. I told you it's just Alex.
I love him.
Yeah. But
He's
anyway,
in love.
that's just the thing. Like, I don't feel like I really recommend Caleb all that much. Mostly because I feel like Caleb just see it as like, oh, stop pushing an agenda on me. You don't want me to hate it. So I just leave him be and just go, if you have time, watch this or whatever. But Lego. Either way. I'm first, apparently. Oh no.
Enjoy.
Gods of randomness have spoken.
Well, you know, I had 8 on this list for so long. I didn't know what the hell to put as my number 9. It took me a very long time to be like, what should my number 9 be? What should it be? And thus, I chose Gurren Lagann.
Interesting.
Purely for the fact that I feel the animated style is on that essence of borderlining. It can feel like a cartoon at times, like, and then obviously having a lot more adult themes and relationships entangled within the story, as well as me wanting to put down a mecha story that wasn't Code Geass. That was the big thing for me. Like, because it's just one of those things where it feels like mecha is always just one of those big Eastern philosophies, Eastern ideas. Also, yes, Alex, I did see that Snapchat of that lizard running around your car.
It was a lizard in my car.
That has nothing to do with it. But does your car become a mecha?
Yes, he went into the engine. I assume he's still there.
Alright, so you're doing some Power Rangers shit where your car is gonna become a Zord of a lizard.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm excited.
Well, either way, Code Geass has a bit of everything. Got some Chad characters. Got a name that will infuriate a lot of Westerners because his name's Simon. It's just Simon.
Seaman.
Yeah, that's his name, Simon. I don't know. How's the
Seaman,
relationships that I don't feel like you get a lot, or there's payoff to in Western cartoons and animation, as well as just the whole vibe of it feels very free and flowing, and it's a good story, good bop, good vibe, and my only other choice was either this or Kill la Kill, which I feel like is both relatively good, like maybe not as your like your first anime, but like your second or third kind of level. I feel like they're very good to have because you don't have to think about it all too much. You don't have to focus on it. You can just kind of like watch and enjoy the story that plays out. And then if you're like me, you cry at episode 8.
I can't speak on Gurren Lagann, but with Kill la Kill, I was tempted to put it on my list, but
Yeah.
I just thought back to the first time I watched that, and I'm all that was going through my head is what the fuck. It is very very weird,
Yeah.
and I can definitely see how someone watching that
Uh,
would just be like turned off
so
just immediately without being a madman.
I mean, Gurren Lagann basically starts its story in a hole, and like there's just some guys who are like, I want to get out of this hole. I want to see the surface. I want to see the world outside. And then they meet a woman who has a sniper rifle, and also get a mecha, and meet a lot of people, and then kind of start a revolution and whatnot. You know, just normal things.
Yeah.
A rough
Different
translation of what
pamphlets?
happened in the story. It's same level of chaos as Kill la Kill, to be honest.
This series would, in my opinion, overkill the kill for beginners. Would show people that stylistic craziness that can go on in this medium without showing them an exorbitant amount of I'm going to call it fan service.
Yeah.
And
I
if
mean,
this
there
was
is a
all
little
about
bit of
Kill la
fan
Kill,
service, but it's not as in your face as Kill
that
la
means
Kill.
that Kill la
especially.
Kill has more than enough reason for it.
Yeah. They made it so that there is reason for it.
Yeah.
It's literally part of the story, which just makes it more understandable.
Yeah. Anyway, that was the reason I chose this one. It's that just kind of like it has something unique. I didn't really want to choose any of the other mecha series because a lot of them take more of a serious vibe to them, and this one I feel like is very fun and free, and I feel like it's very easy to enjoy the characters. Like a lot of people do love like Carmina, of course, and just watching Simon's development and growth in the story, and watching the tragedy that is Yoko Littner and her love life. Anyway, that's that. That's the reason I chose that. That's about it. You know, yeah. So, my next choice is a little show called Mob Psycho 100. Now, of course, when I was creating my list, I was looking at what other lists say and what other lists say, like, oh, these are the best anime to choose from for people to watch. And it's like, okay, I can submit to some of them, others I'll just change a little bit. I saw One Punch Man, I thought, I want to put Mob Psycho down, that seems more interesting for a beginner to watch. It's still one of those ones where it's like, it's free, it's exciting. There is a... what is it? The hidden gun thing in media? What's it called, Alex? You know it.
Chekhov's gun?
Yeah, the gun, kind of. Where Mob is the gun in his own story. And we're watching the percentage kind of go off. But you kind of know, like, oh shit. But then you also got Reagan, who kind of is more of the gun. In the story. It's got 2 seasons. It's a great... It's funny, it's free. A lot of the characters are very enjoyable. And I feel like this is the first one where that it gets you more involved and kind of like the Japanese world that a lot of other series kind of get set into, just like a normal kind of Tokyo or things like running on the path that that mob does, the schools, after school curriculum, all that kind of just random shit that I just feel like you could get in a lot of other series, but this one feels a little bit more enjoyable. There's a story that kind of sets place, and Reagan.
Yeah.
Reagan. If you want some salt, Reagan will be there for you.
It's a series that's not afraid to be unique or different. And it's one that will show you that many people we can actually relate to. This main character who severe anxiety and a way to outlet that, and all the people around him that can affect that. I can see it as a better alternative to One Punch Man because it's genuine in what it tries to achieve. It's its own heartfelt story. Whereas One Punch Man can be beneficial for new anime viewers, where they can get all the tropes and then understand them and have them parodied, so it's not all new. Like, why the fuck is this happening?
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's great. The best thing for new people. This is my first anime, by the way, and I'm still saying it's not the best for first people viewers. Mob Psycho, definitely.
Like, when I was just thinking about it in my head, there's a lot of it that feels like it's a mix of a little bit of everything. It's got the comedy, it's got like the psychic, the thriller a little bit sometimes at points. It's got like that monster bit into it a little bit.
You can even it plays a lot on not a lot, sometimes on Japanese, like what's it called, yokai, and those kind of myths, and it's like an introductory for that of sorts,
which is in a lot of series, but as well, like there are a lot of series that use Japanese spirits and Japanese myths to kind of create their own ones, and I feel like this was just such a good first ground for something with connection, something that's actually quite popular, that I don't feel like gets recommended like for just a general beginner to just get into nearly as much as like One Punch Man does, which I can still understand why One Punch Man does get that credit, like with the whole, okay, I guess it's about superheroes, but yeah, like a lot of what happens in One Punch Man is very weird and very different to anything that you would see, but whilst also feeling very Japanese at the same time as well.
Yeah.
Genos. Yeah. I'm not. One of the other priorities I kind of made with this list as well, may I just say, is to make sure that it's all dubbed.
Fair enough.
That's true.
That was one thing that's like, if there's a dub for it, I feel like that will also make it a lot easier for people to get into a series. Because I had some ideas where I'm like, oh, that series is so good. It would be so good to choose for a person who might be new to this kind of stuff, and then it's only in Japanese. And like, yeah, I'm not going to choose that.
Should have gone Black Lagoon then if you're going dubs.
I know, but like, as your first anime to watch, you're going to choose Black Lagoon. God. Either way. My next one was more into the idea of how can I relate things to a Western audience, I guess, as well, to be your first kind of thing. And of course, the easiest access to that is sports. Now, of course, when I was thinking of sports, I first thought of Keijo, but I'm not gonna.
I was about to put Keijo on mine just as a joke.
My next thought was Hajime no Ippo, but I do understand that a lot of the there is a lot in the beginning that is a little bit outdated in terms of the comedy. Yeah. In terms of just some of the comedy is just a little bit outdated and a little bit cross at times. But it's still, the reason why I love that story is more to do with the basis of like just a kid who was bullied and just working and watching this kid on his grind to become such a great boxer and whatnot. So I had to choose a sports anime, and I also didn't want to choose Haikyuu. I looked at Slam Dunk, I'm thinking, Slam Dunk would be good. It's not really dubbed though. So I just ended up at Kuroko no Basket, which actually does have a dub now as well. and it's on Netflix, which makes it easily accessible for a lot of viewers to watch because a lot of people have Netflix.
Yeah.
Honestly, if Kuroko didn't have a dub, I'd probably had picked another sport, probably Haikyuu to be honest. But either way, it made it here because it was really a lot of people's, I think, first sports series. Maybe not first anime, but it has that little bit of okay, yeah, it's got those unique characters. It has the sports, the athletics to it. A sport that I feel like is well known enough to a lot of people in the world, being basketball. Yeah.
What?
Huh?
Basketball's a real sport?
Yeah, it's a real sport. What did you think it was?
What?
I've only heard of netball.
Bro, I didn't know Kuroko's basketball was about an act. What? I thought they made that up.
I thought it was about soccer.
Bro.
I thought it was about aliens in space.
Ah, fuck.
Isn't it?
It might be, yeah. Well, either way. Sorry, Bounty's now joined the stream.
Hello, Bounty.
Hello, Bounty.
Hello, Bounty. How are you, human?
She's fallen asleep. Okay, she's not joining the stream. She just fell asleep. Either way.
See the human. That's a good idea for an NPC.
What?
What?
A dog that is convinced they are human.
Okay. We already have one of those, and its name's Alex the Owlbear.
He's not convinced he's human. He's convinced he's just as important as a member.
Either way, Kuroko Basket. It's got that little mix of sport, drama, and weird magical ability that the generation of miracles is what they're called from middle school kind of have, as well as a lot of characters that I feel like enjoyable. And if anyone watches it who's watched Haikyuu, I feel like you just see all like the similarities between characters, even just the teamwork. But the whole premise is just like this one guy who's Japanese, but he's also like, he was raised in America, which is kind of like, okay, he's playing basketball in Japan now. He's big dude, and whatnot. And it's like all this intensity, and it's like, well, who the fuck are this generation of miracles? And like, cause like there are 5 people who on a field on basketball, they have a phantom 6th man. So there's essentially the other main character who is Kuroko, who has no presence whatsoever. Who I really relate to, being of someone who can have no presence whatsoever, as Alex can attest to. So I think that's part of the reason why I really got into this story and why it became one of my first sports anime. Is just because of that character kind of power. Is just he has no fucking presence. And this is all like weird shit where it's like one of like the best player who can literally just make you overthink yourself to the point that you just trip up and fool your own self. That's his ability. There's one other one who can just copy anyone's ability. You know, just random shit. Just random shit that gets you more invested in the world. And it's, again, like with Mob Psycho, lets you explore a little bit more like what other sports anime might be like and the settings that they go through. The winning, the losing, the fact that everything's not just straightforward, just win. You never know when they're gonna lose, you never know when they're gonna stop. Every match is just a fucking, just there. You don't know. But yeah, and a Kuroko in the basket. I needed to choose a sports anime. Should have chosen Keijo, let's be honest.
I know, right?
Alex hasn't really watched a lot of sports anime. He's watched Haikyuu.
I've watched Keijo.
And Keijo, yeah. But that's just a given. Everyone needs to watch Keijo. The only other sport I can think of you watching is the chess one.
What chess one?
The March comes in like a line, kind of.
Oh, the Shogi one.
Yeah, Shogi, that's the one. But even again, but that's if you consider it a sport. I partially consider it a sport because it has that little competition thing in it. But it's like, yeah, and yeah, just an interesting thing. It's like sports anime. I feel like any story, it's the reason I don't like sports in real life is because I just can't get invested or care enough.
Well,
The reason I watch sports anime is because of the characters. Of course, I can be
fighting
invested in
anime as
characters.
sports anime. I've watched Baki and Megalobox. I've watched a tennis one, Stars Align, ice skating, Yuri on Ice. Unfortunately, there's a regular skateboarding one. Apparently, how heavy are the dumbbells you lift is a sports anime. I don't consider it that. I've watched a few.
But none that, like, I consider you heavily enjoyed minus Haikyuu.
Megalobox.
Megalobox. Yeah.
Easily. Fucking season 2, man. It's fucking god tier.
Okay. Anyway, I needed sports. I didn't want to choose anything that's really fighting. I wanted to choose a normal sport that I feel like a lot of people know. So I landed on basketball. Probably would have chosen slam dunk if it was not just subbed. But yeah, who knows. Either way, moving on. We have Akira.
Shakira. Sorry.
I mean, like, with Akira, I wanted to choose a movie to put on my list, and I really had a look at like all the movies, and I didn't want to choose a fucking Studio Ghibli one, because
I could have chosen the Studio Ghibli one.
It gives you. I feel like that's not the best ones to like get you into more anime.
Well, considering a lot of people have seen Ghibli films and don't even realize it's anime.
Yeah, that's part of the reason. But it's also one of the biggest tropes, and the reasons I chose this is how actually I think inspirational Akira has been, especially in the past, to just TV show and movie creators who actually look at this thing and actually get inspired to do things off of, and they get ideas and they enjoy the story, especially about like all these characters and the hardships they have to go through. And god, Bounty wants back in. Bounty, you want back in the stream. Okay, Bounty's back in the stream. That bloody Bounty. Bounty's back. Okay. Where was I? Oh yeah, Akira. Yes, weird things happen. Easy to enjoy. I feel like a lot of people would enjoy this film if they saw it, as well as it being actually quite good as an anime film, and it's something that you know while you're watching that it is anime, not like any other Studio Ghibli film. It also has that like 90s aesthetic as well, which I feel like there are a lot of those good like 90s anime
aesthetic
that you can go back to.
when it's an 80s film.
Yeah, I know. But you forget it's an 80s film.
I know, I don't. I know exactly what it is when I watch it. But I recall seeing somewhere an interview with the Disney animator saying like, we're trying our fucking hardest to like make animation. We're trying all these technologies to try and get animation to look this good, but Japan's like 50 years ahead of us, and used Akira as an example. As the example of just... Because, honest to fucking God...
They're 50 years ahead of us, goes back to the 80s.
Especially the background and the...
Yeah.
Background animation that shows up in Akira is genuinely fucking phenomenal. Borderline some of the best animation I've seen ever. Maybe the best. Fuck you, Demon Slayer. Like, that's honestly unparalleled. Akira is...
I feel like it with Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer has more of the effects down.
Well, they've got the moving camera and the...
Yeah. Obviously with like the updated
spinning shots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But these are hand-drawn animated fucking shots. It's fucking... It's like... That's why a lot of praise goes to the original Dragon Ball anime, Dragon Ball Z. The amount of fucking moving lines and shadows that appear in those fights, as opposed to Super, which is a far more simplistic
and it's like fully choreographed as well. And especially when it's animated, you're actually making it more... You have to follow the certain path of the anime from what the manga took and the moves that they did, and also develop moves that would be in between the motion shots. Like, I feel like it's very impressive to do, like, hand draw a lot of that older anime, and even just that aesthetic of it being hand drawn. really makes it nice and it makes it pop almost. That's like, it's just impressive that people can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously Toei's going back to that kind of, obviously they're doing everything digital, but they have that aesthetic of like the hand drawn with the running ink with a lot of their stuff now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, what I was trying to say with that, Akira is a fucking work of art.
It was also probably like one of the best choices from all of my movies to pick. Just because it's one of those movies that I've heard other like filmmakers get inspired from and just take things from.
Bro, they reference it in The Simpsons.
Yeah, they referenced in Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty's fucking full of nerd culture.
Yeah, that's true. But it feels like it needs more presence, and like I feel like it's such a good anime movie to get you into anime. Because any other movie I really think of is just Studio Ghibli, and I didn't want to choose a Studio Ghibli film. And all my other favorite like non-Studio Ghibli movies, I mean, my favorite's Paprika, which depends on the audience. I feel if you're gonna get into anime through that, Ghost in the Shell, I feel like Ghost in the Shell's too big as a series, kind of almost, because there's multiple movies, and a lot of people say like the second one's the best and whatnot. Otherwise, what am I thinking of? Tokyo Godfathers. If Tokyo Godfathers was your first introduction to anime, what would you think, Alex?
Peak of the medium.
Red Line.
I would have watched anime. I've already watched the best one.
Yeah. Oh. I feel like there's a lot to enjoy with Akira, and that's, I guess, why I chose it there, you know? Now, moving on to my next choice. Steins Gate. Steins Gate, good. One of the only
Introduces
anime,
you
like...
to Akihabara without...
yeah.
Fucking...
If, like...
the word?
Without going
Alright.
there. Without being there. Introduces you to, like, Japan. One of the... This is one of the weird ones, because, like, if anyone was going to come to me and be like, alright, what anime do you recommend? I would probably default to Steins Gate. I feel like it's a very safe default, where it's a series that you don't really need to watch the secondary series. If you enjoy it, go ahead, but you can just watch the first one and that's about it. And you know, it's just a safe, it's good in length, being like what, 20, 21, 23 episodes long or some shit.
Yeah,
Just like
20, 24
24
plus an extra episode.
Yeah. A little OVA thing, you know, yeah. 25, 24, yeah. 24 episodes. That's fairly decent for an anime series, as well as just being something that I feel is just so good and can be really enjoyed by anyone and a lot of people. And it has so much to it. And the story's great, the characters, the relationships that all the characters have with each other. It's not just like, okay, everyone has character. The way Okabe kind of acts as this psychopathic, but we know he's not psychopathic, this psychopathic menace to his own life and his own creation, feeling like he's a mad scientist and over-exaggerating himself, but also created something so powerful that it changes the literal world around him, and he's the only one who can recognize this. And all the storyline, the thriller aspect to it really got to me, and I really enjoyed it. And it's definitely, like, I feel the safest bet if I was going to recommend someone an anime and to show them, like, this is what anime kind of means to me. This is what I feel anime can be for people. This is the level they can be at. Like, a lot of the way I feel like people would describe Death Note, because a lot of people had Death Note be their first anime, where it's like, oh, this is not just like, oh, the way you think about it in the West, or those Western ideas coming through about like, oh, anime is just for kids, which is obviously a lot more older, and less of that is happening now as well. But you know, if I just think it's a very good story and a very good. Has a lot of interesting things and interesting concept behind it as well, where it has things I feel like a lot of Westerners are familiarize themselves with, but in a unique way as well. And it also has an English name in it because Okabe just keeps screaming Christina. Christina! Also, Dr. Pepper's in it, so you know. I don't know. Anything to say, Alex, about Steins Gate?
Nothing you haven't already said.
Like, do you kind of like understand like where I came from with that whole like?
Oh
this is what I think like anime. If this is going to be your first anime, this is what I feel like it means to someone, that kind of thing. Or,
yeah. Sorry, I'm halfway through a lamb shake.
the man's eating. Leave him alone. Yeah. Well, that's that. I guess. Caleb, don't worry. You'll get your chance to talk soon. Alright. Anyway, next up is Psycho Pass. I mean, the main motivation behind this one is because I was really trying to think of like, okay, if you're a person who likes crime, what would be a great thing to get themselves into that's not something that's thrillerish without cops? Because I mean, if you're interested in crime, I guess Steins Gate kind of works and hits all those notes. But I also chose Psycho Pass because it's an anime original. I think that's the bit that really got to me. It's like, yeah, I feel like a lot of people could enjoy this. There are a lot of things to ease someone into it with like the whole kind of policic nature to it, whilst also having that twist that I feel like a lot of anime have, and it's just so strong, as well as having so many strong pronounced characters and ideas and the different thoughts that each character has. I just felt like it's such a good way to introduce someone who like might be familiarize themselves with something that's a little bit more sci-fi-ish or crime based. Because when I was trying to think of things that are sci-fi and anime, I couldn't really narrow it down too much because all my brain just went to is mechas and shit and robots, and I didn't want to go down that route. But I like this idea of like that futuristic technology kind of thing where it's like I can understand the sci-fi nature behind this, and the story is good, the characters, the world it's set in. I feel I can introduce someone to a whole new side of anime almost. And because it is an anime original, it pulls all that strength of like being on its own together, and it holds itself a lot like Cowboy Bebop. But I didn't want to put Cowboy Bebop on this list because that's because I feel like that was more. I feel like Cowboy Bebop was more like for me a toss up. It's like, did the Cowboy Bebop? Maybe not. I'll do something else. I feel like, as well as I felt like Cowboy Bebop I saw on a couple of those like anime for beginners lists. So I'm like, I'm not gonna put you. You're on these lists. Piss off. So I went with Psycho Pass. Are you interested in the idea of me putting Psycho Pass on this list, or do you disagree, Alex? Or
for Western audiences to get into anime, especially if those they're interested in a lot of Western media, especially nowadays, focus a lot on what's the word? Not a dystopian future, but like a fake paradise of sorts,
Yeah.
of an authoritarian government, or a future where their whole fate is determined by the ones that rule them. And Psycho Pass, much like Blade Runner, really captures that idea. So if you're a fan of Blade Runner, or any other, what's the word? There's a word, cyberpunk stories.
Yeah, cyberpunk. That's the word.
That's the one. Which many Western audiences are a fan of. Psycho Pass is one of the best anime that will capture that idea.
But if someone came to you and go like, all right, Alex, sci-fi anime, what do you think of?
Cowboy Bebop. Sci-fi, Cowboy Bebop, cyberpunk, Psychopaths would be my first. What probably my first. What else is
Because like with the whole like I get like how you like I always think of because of like the different things that occur in Cowboy Bebop. I always just think of it more as that space opera, which I guess is sci-fi, but my brain goes to the space opera first.
Yeah. Yeah, Psychopaths is plays around with a lot of themes you'll see in a lot of Western media. They're inspired by, I think it was what was the fuck was it? Total Recall? I don't recall. Yeah. A common theme in my list is series that take Western what's the word? Inspirations, which would, in my opinion, be a good way for not a transition, I suppose, between the mediums. Psychopaths is absolutely one of those.
Yeah. And speaking of things that I feel like could ease someone into something, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yeah, I don't see the logic in this one, champ.
Okay. Alright. So originally, I had Black Butler in this spot, and I changed it to JoJo's for the simple fact that it starts off in something I feel a lot of Western people can kind of understand, and it is one of those series I feel like a lot of people can kind of enjoy because it has a little bit of action, has a little bit of story, it's got a little bit of nonsense, actually a lot of nonsense. But I think the root of it was mostly to do with the fact that I wanted to pick a series that could be easy for someone to get into and a world that they might be easy to understand. Like, I mean, the first part is literally set in late 1700... late 1800s England. The second part's in fucking Europe, Italy, America, Mexico during World War II, and then ease someone into Japan. That's the idea I was kind of thinking of, where it eases someone into Japan, and you don't even spend a lot of time in Japan. You're in this kind of late, like the 80s, 70s kind of era, and you're exploring China, Asia, moving on to Egypt. And it has a lot of those tropes of like, okay, yeah, like that, like around the world in 80 days or whatever, is that kind of idea with part 3. And then going straight into like a little town and then restricting it again by going to Italy and spending a whole part in Italy. And one of the biggest strengths I saw with this is like, you can partially start from any point. Like, I've met people who've started from part 5. I met people who started from part 4. I've met people... I'm probably the most have started from part 3. I started from part 3, technically.
But I do not condone this behaviour.
Yeah, I do not condone this behaviour whatsoever. Plus, the option for dub is there. It's not the one that's advised for the series. But the dub makes it easy to get into. Like, you're really just starting off with, like, alright, there's this weird, like, kind of Van Helsing kind of thing with, like, your main character gaining a special weird ability to fight vampires. And vampires is such a Western idea and concept of a monster. But also having, like, the vampire be its own thing and own spin, not a typical vampire, but God himself. Because Dio is God.
Dio can go fuck himself.
And then going like to different cultures with like Mayan shit in part 2, having a lot more time in Italy and the different people you meet, and I feel like it's something that can be a little bit easier to flow through, and I can understand why there are so many people who have only seen JoJo's.
It does go with the idea I said about Western influences, but like, and there is a limit in my book, and this is one of them.
Fuck you! I don't like that limit.
It's to pass the limits then.
I have surpassed the limits. As well as, again, it's one of those series that I put on here is because it's relatively very accessible in a lot of places.
It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. I feel like it's on other anime streaming services as well. And JoJo's is getting a lot more popular and bigger, and I thought, I feel like people can enjoy this. There's a lot to love about it. Getting into it, there's those little things and tropes that can feel very Western and also bring in ideas, especially the fact that in the beginning of JoJo's, and even before JoJo's, the creator of this series, Mr.
Araki.
Yeah, Mr. Araki himself was heavily inspired off of Western movies. The Clint Eastwood type character, who fucking Part 3's protagonist is based off of. He literally talked in like one of the books about his idea of what a hero should be, and it's not that stereotypical one that you might see. It's someone who's a little bit more gritty, dark, and who has to push past shit to balance and do crap. That's the idea of a hero he saw, and that's why he created someone like Jotaro Kujo, who for the longest time was a lot of people's favorite JoJo because he had that badass nature. But fuck you, Joseph's a god.
There we go.
Also, I love the meme now. That's like the meme of the meme with Jolene with it's like, no, this is for females to fall in love with. Go back to the men. To JoJo's fans, you're not meant to become more straight. You're meant to go back to the gayness of the men. I don't know. It's also proof of like one thing with this series as well. It's like the fact that it's still going, and the fact that it really does have a lot of parts to it that have a beginning, middle, and end.
Where's part 9 then?
What do you mean with part 9? Yeah, I don't know what the fuck's happening with part 9. Some weird shit's happening with part 9. But anyway, I thought it was a good plot here. And now, finally, Caleb can talk. Because the next one is Hunter x Hunter. I mean, Hunter x Hunter was like the first thing I probably thought of. It's like, if I was going to introduce someone to a big shonen, besides One Piece, what would I choose? No. I feel like Hunter x Hunter is probably the best one to introduce someone to a series that they're looking for that's a little bit lengthy, has more to it, has multiple stories in it, as well as in terms of the anime sake, it has a good ending point.
Right.
That's I think one of the biggest reasons why I chose it. It's like Dragon Ball's endings are kind of just okay, it's just there, there's no real ending, it's just kind of there, it's just kind of, you can just stop at any point with Dragon Ball and whatnot. But with Hunter x Hunter, it really feels like there is a point to end. One Piece hasn't fucking ended, so don't worry yourself with that. Naruto's ending, Bleach's ending,
Well, you could still, many people like to end at some Japan arc anyway.
Yeah. But it doesn't feel right sometimes because there is still a lot of.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with it, but that's a common thing that happens.
Yeah, which I disagree with because a lot of the war is actually very good. It's only the ending.
After Mother goes, then it's.
Yeah, that's essentially what happens.
Yeah, that's where you stop.
You stop at Mother.
You stop and you're like, Madara wins. End of the day. Goodbye.
Yeah, that's right.
My guy tried his hardest. So.
Yeah. But it's also the thing where it's like, you do have a character like Gon who is very innocent in nature, who doesn't have a lot of history behind him. He's a character that you get to fully experience and go along this adventure with as he goes through everything, whilst also having other characters to kind of fill in those gaps. The goofy guy with the biggest heart, Alex,
Oh boy.
I was talking about Leorio, the
I know.
the cursed being who only wants revenge, and to hate a certain enemy, being obviously Kurapika, and Killua, a person who doesn't know what he wants to be. He's been forced to be in this kind of cage of prison. This is what his path has been set and forced to be in. But he actually gets to experience what he gets to choose, and he always feels like he's not good enough.
He's not.
By the end.
He couldn't save him.
Yeah.
I think he did in the end, but like, yeah, anyway.
It's more the idea of like him feeling like he's always the monster who might hurt Gon, and then seeing Gon become the monster himself, and him being the one who's practically innocent in that sense, who thinks and has more of the heart in the situation. And it's just, I feel like such a good way to introduce you to a lot of shonenistic tropes with someone who's at least more experienced in writing a shonen as well. Because obviously he has Yu Yu Hakusho under his belt, Mr. Togashi. But Hunter x Hunter is that one that I feel like a lot of people really go into and enjoy, and a lot of people put him as fucking 10 out of 10. I don't fully agree with that, but
I do.
But it is something that does occur, and I feel like, if anything, this is a person who's kind of mastered that tournament arc kind of thing without you even realizing there might be a tournament arc involved. Because, I mean, starting off with a tournament arc, which is such an easy way to get introduced to characters, is such a great thing and great aspect to it, as well as not really starting with the tournament, but also you are starting with the tournament. Because the whole first trial is essentially getting through the exams. And that doesn't take very long, and I think the pacing's strong, it's very good. I just feel like there's a lot to it, and a lot of complex characters I feel like a lot of people can enjoy, fall in love with, and the ideas of being created or being a villain, which I know that Caleb loved in that little last arc. Yeah. Or the idea of who you're meant to be, what person you are, and how bitch of a dad can be. Yeah. Caleb, want to talk about Hunter x Hunter?
Oh no, you pretty much said it all.
What? Come on, Caleb, it's the first time
No,
we can talk.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's good. It's good. It's you know.
But like, but for a beginner, right? Like, what would you say? Like, if you're going to try and convince someone who's new to anime, who wants something big to digest, and you're thinking Hunter x Hunter, what would you suggest to them why they should watch it?
I would recommend it to people who want to see who perhaps maybe are more into characters and character development, and seeing different characters who have different goals and different journeys to undertake. Again, one thing I love about Hunter x Hunter is that it's not just Gon and Killua, but then you've also got Leorio and Kurapika, who
And
also
the
have their
pervert.
own journeys to undertake.
And the pervert.
Yeah, and then you've got other characters as well on the side that also have their own journeys, which I think is a good. Yeah, I think it would keep someone who is watching it for the first time, hopefully engaged.
As well as a power system that doesn't come into the story at the beginning.
That's
It's
true.
It's
That's
something that gets built up later, so you have time to understand it and really get to learn about how the systems work in this
Oh yeah.
world.
Explain Nen to me then.
Nen, I don't want to explain them to you. Nen, you're a bitch.
If it's so easy to understand, explain it to me.
No,
What are
I'm
the
saying
times
it's not
or
easy
6
to
times?
understand. I'm saying it's not easy to understand. I'm saying I'm glad that it gives you that time to understand it and learn with them.
So,
It makes
what
you
did you
also,
learn?
but it also makes you focus on the law of the world rather than the law of the power system.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, you're more focused on, okay, what are the hunters? What do they do? What happens here? What happens here? And then eventually there's that step up, that being Nen, and it even slowly introduces you. starting with just the basics until eventually you get to the unique powers that
which
characters will eventually possess.
which again goes back to characters as well, because a lot of the powers and abilities are essentially based on the person who's using them. It's a whole character-based power system as well, which is why it's so much fun and free, you know. Hunter x Hunter, what a story. Either way, I'm up to my last one. Before I hand it off to Caleb, because he's next. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Probably the one I saw that was probably recommended one of the most times on a lot of anime for beginners type of things. Simply for the fact that I feel like it's quite a good story to get into if you're a beginner, because stylistically it has a unique, charming style that can feel a little bit cartoonish and silly, but also quite serious at times. And if you watch the series, you can understand the serious moments, whilst also having consequence being a big part of the story. Consequence for your own actions, and just like the fact that there are real stakes in the story. Again, another power system that we don't get to learn right away, but is not something a little bit more unique that doesn't get used as often in Western series. Maybe if you're a fan of Arthurian lore, I guess, maybe. But it also has a world that is to be explored, and you get to follow all these different characters and the story that takes place, as well as the ideas of like 7 deadly sins, truth, God, and what religion means, whilst also being like essentially a dictatorship being ruled by someone who's not fit to lead. And I feel like there's a lot more political nature behind the story that a lot of people think is great, whilst also have a kind of a satisfying ending as well. And I feel like that was the biggest point I wanted to go for with like these last couple ones, where it's like, well, JoJo's, most of the endings is just the JoJo dying, unless they just move on. Hunter x Hunter, it ends at a reasonable point, and you will hate yourself if you continue. And Fullmetal Alchemist really just has that ending where it's like, this is it, this is the story I wanted to tell. This is the arc, this is what happens in this world that they created, and I love all the different characters and how this big buff man can just be absolutely annihilated by his sister, who's amazing. I also love that his ability to, he basically just punches shit and creates a statue of himself. Which seems like such a Alex character. Oh wait, he's Alex and Alex. His name's Alex. You got the police kind of nature to it as well, the military. I feel like there's a lot of things that I feel like you can be familiarized with, whilst also noticing that there is consequence for your actions. There are things that you need to consider in this world. There are characters who are going out there for revenge, people who are hurt due to other characters. You see the effect loss has on people in this world as well, from little girls who lose their own lives to little girls who lose their father's lives.
You let out 2 chuckles there about girls losing their fathers or such. Why are you laughing?
To hurt you.
Sure.
Anyway, that's my list. Got anything to say about Fullmetal, Alex?
I made the joke earlier with Tokyo Godfathers. Like, when you watch the best thing already, like, you don't even need to watch more. You've already reached the peak of the medium. I don't know. That was a joke. Obviously, you don't just have to stop with the best. Full Metal is one of the, in my opinion, best written, concise stories that one can find, and for a Western audience, there's a lot of themes and ideas there that exist in Western media that can easily be translated over. Like you mentioned, the military police ruled by the Führer, and the what's the basis for it? Based
Wasn't-
on like Germany and such.
Yeah, based on like a Germany kind of Prussian era type aesthetic.
And then the relationships they have with the Asian country as well.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of things that people need to understand, and like you mentioned, the Seven Deadly Sins, something that I assume most Western audiences are familiar with. It was in fucking Shazam, for example.
Yeah, and there's in a lot of different things like the Bible talks about a little bit.
Yeah.
Those kind of sins, and I mean, we all know
For-
how big Christianity is in the West.
For a Western audience, this is definitely one of the top picks for
Yeah.
series that the new audiences can understand and also get a good view of what how Japanese writing and character creation and even comedy can work.
As well as my top two, having unique worlds that can really be felt and explored a little bit more is also, I feel like, a very good thing, because a lot of anime do create their own worlds, isekais, and familiarizing themselves with like the style of the world can help you learn more about just the story in general, or characters and ideas that the story might have. But yeah, that's my list. Moving on, we have Caleb's list, and I can finally shut up.
List.
List.
It's a list.
Yeah, there's a list.
Hey, that's a Hunter x Hunter character.
Okay. So, before I start, I just want to preface what my criteria was of sort of how I went about selecting stuff. Primarily, it was about a bit of it was familiarity. Some of it, I suppose, was inherent quality, but I feel like most of it I chose familiarity and the ability for someone to sort of get in and understand what was going on. Though, of course, again, there are exceptions here. And yeah, but yeah,
Sorry.
all right. I'll explain more as we get to each one. But
Yeah.
actually, funnily enough, the first one is sort of that, which is Sword Art Online. So the reason I chose Sword Art,
Sorry.
is again, I don't think many people would call it the greatest show ever created. Far from it. But the reason it's on here is because it is admittedly familiar, right? I mean, not only is it an isekai, but it's an isekai that's directly linked to a game, which is something that I feel like Western audiences are very familiar with.
Especially if they gotta go and watch anime.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Cause even just like the idea of a lot of gamers in Japan creating those isekais, a lot of them take on that more RPG aesthetic in a more direct manner than Sword Art Online does.
It's far more simpler.
Yeah.
It and admittedly, it's something that I actually fault the anime for in comparison to the light novel, that it doesn't focus enough on the RPG, on the game elements. But at the very least, the setting is sort of, it's sort of familiar, as well as, I suppose, even the setting of the game itself. It's medieval fantasy, and even going forward, the series,
Guns.
goes to Alfheim, which is Nordic, and then GGO, which is just
Guns.
guns,
Go pew pew.
So that's sort of the reason I put it on there. And when it comes to a first show, I think quality is not only subjective, but it is also relative, right? I know when I was first watching some, I viewed certain shows as good at the time, but then later on, I viewed them as not as good when I watched other stuff. I think when someone comes into it, they may not necessarily judge its quality in the same way if they haven't seen other shows in the medium to compare it to, if that
But
makes
we will
sense.
all cry about Klein's Pizza.
Saddest
Oh,
moment.
precisely. That's the saddest
You
moment,
want
and
something,
all
if you
true
want
men
something
will
Western
cry.
audiences can relate to, it's the loss of a pizza.
That's
Precisely, exactly. And there's also I suppose there's other Western stuff. I mean, some of it might not be intentional. Well, I mean, there's a lightsaber, so I think that's pretty intentional. And
I mean, a lot of
uh,
guns
Death
feel very
Gun,
American.
Death Gun reminds me of Darth Vader.
Well, Death Gun
And I
reminds me
wondered
of
if I
kind of
want,
more of a hackerish type character you might
yeah,
see,
yeah, yeah.
like an anonymous kind of figure in the West.
But then just his design, his design overall is very sort of Darth Vader-y. I don't know if that was intentional, but it was
I feel
definitely
like one of the strengths with it, just overall, is just that genre jump, where there are
mm.
multiple genres with the story from going from like a more medieval kind of thing that I feel like a lot of people can familiarize themselves with because they're essentially just playing with swords and shields and crossbows and shit like that, just the
And
simplest weapons.
even
Moving
the
into
swords,
a more
none of
fantasy.
none of them were katanas
Yeah, none
from
of them are.
memory. They were all.
I mean, I think there was someone. There was like some characters who might have had a katana.
Yeah, they probably like were
Yeah.
other characters, but the main weapons weren't
No.
really. Like there was a rapier, a long sword,
All right. Yeah.
a fucking shield, a massive fucking kite shield.
A hammer.
Yeah, hammer,
Mm.
daggers, and all that shit. So
And,
I think it is definitely more familiar for Western people to
and
jump
even just
into.
that survival nature behind the story, I think, was very strong in that first part.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you sort of touched on it before about the sort of idea of dystopia, and I think Sword Art Online has a degree of that because it's sort of, I suppose, a commentary on our connection to reality. I mean,
Oh
it is in many ways.
Yeah, it is.
It even talks about um, our input and output with reality, connection to it, and how similar the virtual one is to the real one, and that also is very familiar because to be frank, that sort of concept is fucking global at this point.
Oh yeah,
You know, every almost every society is grappling with it in some way. The introduction of technology and the connection with it. So
One thing I think that I feel like we'll find on a lot of these lists is a, a possible connection with a lot of us and those early years of us watching anime, and Sword Art Online for I know Caleb and myself was one of those things that we got into, but also have like gone so far apart, grown so far apart from. Because me personally, I know there are better isekais out there, but none that I feel like suits someone if you're just getting into a series better
mm,
than Sword Art Online, especially considering a lot of them have that game basis. Like,
yeah,
sure, I can think of other isekais. I mean, technically, Bleach is an isekai, Inuyasha is an isekai, but none of them have that aesthetic of being a game and having that kind of like be a part of the story. And again, I just want to commend them on that genre aspect to it, which makes it feel like there is more to it. And it can
yeah.
really get you to enjoy something without it feeling stale. That a lot of other, I feel like, isekais can do and be at times. Yeah.
The only reason it's not higher is sort of two reasons. The first is there are many tropes within it.
Yeah.
You know, quite a bit of sexualization, which isn't inherently bad. It's just that can
The idea of
sometimes
a
be a bit.
harem.
Yeah, precisely. And then there's also the quality aspect. I mean, again, quality is subjective, but
Yeah.
if you end up finding other shows to be better in quality, looking back at SAO, you might, you know, it's always nice to look back at the first thing you watched and say, I still enjoy this. So I can understand if that's potentially going to leave a little bit of a sour taste, but you know, sure. I mean, I can still look back at SAO being one of my earlier shows I watched, and I can still look back at it and say, you
I
know,
can appreciate
it's
it
not
for what
as
it
good
was.
now, but I can still I still appreciate it.
And there's still things I like about it, like the whole, like we still talk about the idea of a fucking nerve gear.
Precise. Oh, precise. I think. I mean, whenever someone talks about
especially this year.
future virtual reality stuff, they always bring up a nerve gear. Always is that thing is now. It's. I mean, I'm hesitant to say it's like a lightsaber in that sense that people just refer to this technology as a nerve gear or something like this. You know, they see a laser sword. Ah, that's a lightsaber. Even if it's not a lightsaber, that's what they'll refer to it as. Same with the
Yeah.
nerve gear.
Fair enough.
I feel like I'm the only one in this call that still thinks SEO is very good.
I wouldn't say
Parts
it's
of
not
it.
good. I more mean that others compared again relatively compared to other
Yeah.
series, it might not hold up as well.
Mm-hmm. That's
Well,
fine.
yeah, because it's
Yeah.
written by a guy who had no writing experience. He just
Yeah.
liked video games.
But even still, with no
That's
writing,
probably why I would put it up there
w-
as a beginner's anime.
yeah.
Sorry.
But also, like with no writing experience, this guy was able to make something. Especially the first arc, in my opinion, is the best arc.
Oh yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is partially why I was impressed with it. But then I just kind of fell out of love with it, with all like the weird shit that happened in the story and the characters. And I didn't like how some of the characters were used and utilized. And then I obviously found better isekai that I enjoyed and related to more, especially like a game isekai that I relate to more. Log Horizon or Overlord is a much better choice for a person like myself. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Sword Art is because it is that it's for it's a lot easier to digest
Yeah.
series, and it is what's it because you mentioned before with the themes of you said my mention before the dystopia and the
Mm.
ideas that we what's the word fucking words that our society currently likes to make ideas and videos on. Fuck, even I made a short film about our concept of reality at some point, which you were both in. Thank you both very much.
You're welcome.
It was.
I played God.
Yeah. I still like that concept, and I think SEO for the skill level of the writer did a wonderful job, and it's something that has managed to captivate plenty of audiences, even still to this day with the constant new seasons of movies coming out.
Again,
It's definitely an early thing, not
I-
a bad thing. I still don't think it's bad in hindsight. There's just obviously,
yeah.
people with actual writing experience writing stories with the same concepts better, but that doesn't make Sword Art bad. And I think it's
One thing I
fantastic
think
structure.
I appreciated on with the like watching it so early was all those idea of psychological trauma, like
Yeah, that's true.
Totsunon and her PTSD or
Mhm.
other characters, and the idea of like this technology being able to help people, just like in our world where nerve gear actually helps people with illnesses and whatnot.
That's true.
I like that aspect to it.
There's a YouTuber uh I don't believe you would have watched him, but he suffers from I forgot what the condition's called. Sleep paralyzation. That's it.
Hmm.
And he suffers from that quite heavily. And he did this experiment where he went to sleep in Minecraft, and what he found was it actually helped him with his sleep paralyzation. And I thought that was rather interesting because again, like you mentioned, we've seen on certain technology through virtual worlds and all that can potentially actually be therapeutic to some extent, which and again, like I find myself now looking at different concepts raised by SAO and sort of thinking back to them and thinking how relevant they are and still can be. So I think again, like you guys were saying, how one good thing it did was start those themes and create
Yeah.
them and make them common today.
Mm.
It
Also,
borderline created the fucking isekai industry today. The fuck.
fuck
True.
Excel World.
True. It's not as bad, but
Openings
yeah,
a bop.
yeah,
Didn't like the series
yeah.
at all.
All right. Well, if we have nothing else for SAO,
No.
we will move on to Death Note. Now, Death Note is actually is one of the exceptions to my previously stated rule, where its accessibility is not necessarily um, as high as the other entries on this list. However,
I feel like it's
I
relatively
do think
accessible.
this
It's
is
on
more
Netflix.
of when I say sorry, not accessibility, familiarity
Oh,
more so.
familiarity, yeah.
Yep, sorry. Um, but yeah,
Well, no, I beg to differ. Sorry to interrupt, but I beg to differ. A Death Note, I knew of what a Death Note was, or the idea of a concept, similar to, like you mentioned, a lightsaber or a nerve gear. They exceed their own series in a way.
that's
Yeah.
very true. That's very true. Very true.
The Death Note
I
itself,
mean,
I think, is incredibly popular. So, which is
I mean, I
More
think
so
like
than the
back when I was young, like this was back like early-ish YouTube, like around 2007, 2008, 2009 maybe, around no, maybe 2009. I'll go 2009. Around like 2009, like I think the first concept or idea I heard about like Death Note actually came from like Smosh.
I was about to say that.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Rush video. I thought they
There
made
was
it up.
this, yeah, like me too. I thought like they made up the idea of like a Death Note, and they also had like a life note in it, and like that was the first time I had ever experienced the idea or concept of a Death Note.
The idea that a
Yeah,
stupid Smosh video popularized anime today is wild to me.
but it also shows you how big it was back then when it came out and being released. I mean, like you hear things about like how schools had to ban these notebooks that had like Death Note covers because they would just write their teacher's name in it.
No, that's humorous. That just brings me back to fucking kindergarten and pretending to be a Jedi and hitting someone with a hand lightsaber and getting in trouble.
Fucking
When you get in when a series
kindergarten
makes you
Caleb
get
is
in
a
trouble,
fucking
that's when
menace.
it's successful. But the that is actually a very very valid point. Though it's not the reason I put it on here. Largely, I put it on here because anecdotally, it was one of the first I watched. It could have even been the second anime I watched. Um, and I remember the first episode, I was hooked. It just the way it its pacing, the way dealt with its tone, the way it sort of amplifies seemingly normal events and makes them bigger. You know, a tennis game being
No,
this
no, no,
sort
no,
of
no, no, no.
this big
The
fight,
man's just
eating a
writing the
potato chip.
book. The man's just writing the book. He eats the potato chip, and it just makes such an epic moment behind it. Like the man's just studying homework, also being watched by the elusive L.
Yep, and it's that thing where it's this game that's sort of this these two people going up against each other, but it's purely intellectual. It's very little physically.
It's
I
a
mean, sure,
different kind of battle that you don't get to see often.
there's the tennis game, which is obviously physical, but it's actually the point of it isn't physical. The point is that it's Al trying to figure out if Light is Kira, but then there's also Light understanding that and trying to figure out what to do, and it's this mental mind game that I think um, is an absolutely great place to start because it hooks you in, and I think it's this is one of the shows that I think made me like Sao less, simply because it was shows like this where the writing and the delivery of themes was so good that other shows I began to dislike because when I compared them with Death Note, it's like but they didn't do it as well as this did it. Uh, which I suppose to one extent is good because it does make you set a high standard for other shows. On the other hand, that high standard could be a detriment because it might make you enjoy certain shows less because they don't deliver on the same principles, which doesn't necessarily make them bad. I think I said this years ago, but the way I often look at something like SAO is that it's simpler. You don't have to. I mean, there's obviously themes to think about, but you don't necessarily need to understand all these characters. These characters aren't necessarily completely complex. You know, many of the girls are not too many dimensional, but
There aren't many
some
even
people that's
girls in the
fine.
series.
To some that's fine. To some you don't need a very complex characters. You don't need these complex tones uh, delivered in complex ways. Sometimes you just want something fun to watch.
Yeah.
So on one hand, that can be a bit detrimental. On the other hand, I do think it's nice because it makes you want to watch others because you see this thing of quality and like there must be more like this. So
Yeah.
you go searching
And of
in a
course,
way, sort of like a drug which is a
of course, one thing that you didn't really touch on, but like that idea of following someone who seemingly appears more like the villain in their story.
True.
And the
Which is
idea of just
something
following a
somewhat
villain.
unique.
Yeah. The idea of
I mean, it's less unique now, but
yeah.
I feel like back
then
then
it was a big thing,
it's not as
and
common.
it sparked like a lot of different series. I guess like Dexter's one of them, like a TV show where the main character's a psychopath, killing people, and like he has a moral code, but like whatever. And yeah, it's on that same line where it's like, oh, two people work for the cops, and it's like they have to dodge and guess while they on the insides, also not starting out that way, and just a psychological battle between two people that might occur.
And I mean, guess a lot of Western shit is there's a lot of action, but perhaps going into a shonen an action shonen sort of for the first time, perhaps could turn some people off if it's just if a lot of it is just fighting. And that's not to say that many of the fighting ones don't have great story or whichever. It's just that I can understand if for certain people it could be a little bit distracting.
Yeah.
And for some people that might not be what they're looking for necessarily, because I know many people view things with a lot of action as not having as much quality. So I think Death Note does fit that sort of need, I suppose.
I just think like it's just one of those things where it's like it's kind of like my top choice with Full Metal. It's one of those series that I feel like a lot of people from the West can enjoy, whilst also not being too Western and have that aesthetic. Like obviously there's more like humanistic natures that I feel like a lot of people would be familiar with like the idea of smoking or having your Shinigami, this weird being fucking addicted to apples.
Man likes sweetness. What do you want?
He likes them apples. Very much likes them apples.
The rules that get set in place, even. And I feel just like with the creators themselves, they love the idea of having a different kind of battle that isn't so psychological. It's more about there are more aspects to the battle than just it's a fist fight or it's like a competition with like sports team playing against each other or just like trying to outdo each other is one of those things I feel like the creators themselves put in a lot of their other works as well. And that really gets to show. It's like seeming and appearing, acting like you're this innocent being. And I think one of the most memorable, like there's some memorable moments for me where it's like the FBI agent followed Light and then Light followed him back to his
Ray
death.
Pember is fucking fantastic. And then, I love everything.
And then
about
to go play on that, the idea of him talking to that FBI's wife.
Yep.
And their conversation leading to her death is one of, I think, the best moments that really gets you into the series. And it happens at a relatively early stage in the story.
That scene where they're outside the police department, and it's just him trying to not get her to go in, and just that was such a tense moment. But it doesn't, it's not like there's this massive ball of energy that's about to destroy the planet. And that's not what's created the tension. It's literally this guy is trying to not get her in the police department because if she goes in there, he is fucked. But then if she doesn't go in there, she is also fucked.
The way someone plays with people like puppets.
Yeah.
Something so like him on the bus before he kills the FBI agent. Like him on the bus, he played that whole scene out. He wrote it all out beforehand.
He played Pember like a fucking fiddle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I want to rewatch Death Note.
I also partially wanted to rewatch Sword Art Online after with us talking about that first arc.
Yeah, I actually really want to rewatch that Death Note movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the Japanese one. Okay.
Yeah, the Japanese one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what.
Alright, well, if there's no more comments for Death Note, we're going to move on to the next one. And to be honest, the reason why Dragon Ball is on here is
Specifically Dragon Ball Z, you
yeah,
said.
specifically. Well, there's two reasons. There's the one what the first reason is Dragon Ball in general, but I suppose more for Z is it's been proven to work. The, the, the fact that it's the most popular anime of all time, and that there are so many people who have watched it who aren't even into anime, is I think
Again,
just speaks for itself.
it's also that idea that we talked about before, the idea of the Death Note, being familiar with it before actually knowing
Yep,
it's a
yep,
series. Super Saiyan is such a well-known thing.
yep, yep, yep.
Even before Dragon Ball. And one thing I was going to say over is because Dragon Ball Z obviously is heavily inspired by Western themes, like a
Yep.
Western movie in particular. Whilst also, if you go into Dragon Ball originally, you
Mhm.
might be a bit put off or scared by the jokes and the humor that gets played on in the beginning.
Yeah, that's very true. And
Whereas
I
Dragon Ball's not like that. Yeah.
and again with it being statistically proven, I mean more people have gone into Z than the original, and I personally love the original, but just
Yeah.
if I were to recommend it to someone, I can understand if the original wouldn't speak to them as much. Now, I would recommend someone who has watched Z to then perhaps go back and watch the original because it does very much supplement the story and gives you a bit more context for Goku. But
It gives you a shit ton of context for Goku.
yeah, I mean, his
Like,
fight with Piccolo. I mean,
the
His
story,
relationship with
it's
everyone.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, look, I mean, and obviously people have watched just Z perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But it is definitely a series that comes off the tail of Dragon Ball.
Uh,
It definitely continues on from it.
my favorite arc is the last arc in Dragon Ball, not Z.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you know, it's a show that again with familiarity. You know, if you
Mm.
watch the Android Saga, you'll notice themes from Terminator.
The
And
Saiyan
there's a
saga, themes from Superman,
yeah, and there's a mix of different cultures in terms of the themes. You know, you see a bit of the Japanese culture, but you see a bit of the Western culture.
Chinese as
You see a
well.
bit of yeah Chinese,
Chinese is heavily
um,
in it.
which I think is really good because it gives you sort of an idea of this world is very familiar to me, but it's
Mm.
also different enough that it's interesting, and I think that can be quite enthralling to people, and especially I mean the other thing is it has a significant fan base, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's always nice to get into something that your mates also know as well because it's nice to talk with people.
Mm.
And if you get into Dragon Ball, you are significantly more likely to find someone who you can talk about with Dragon Ball than than any other anime, statistically speaking.
There are some people
So
who've only watched the Broly movie
yeah, yeah,
couldn't
just because
really.
they heard it was good.
yeah, precisely. So
Alex, you were once one of that people.
he was,
Literally.
but
It was a good movie.
and it's ongoing as well. I mean, that you can with many of these, I don't even expect. With one of these, I don't expect you to watch the entire thing. It's more just you know, with this you can just watch Z. But then if you want more, there is Dragon Ball, there is Super, there is GT, and then there's also the manga if you want to get
And
into it. But
games.
yeah,
Shit ton of games.
yeah, many games. And I actually forgot to say that about Sword Art.
And
I very much
Dragon
like
Ball Evolution.
I very much like Fatal Bullet for SAO, and Dragon Ball also has good games, and that can be something that I myself as who's primarily a gamer and who came from a gaming background, I do like seeing other games, but yeah, again, it's significantly widespread, and with some more niche shows, it can be a little bit annoying getting into something and then it's not well known. But with Dragon Ball, there's tons of people to
Yeah.
share that passion with. That's another reason why it's on here. But I could not put it again. Statistically speaking, it had to be on here for me.
Yeah.
Alex, you got any comments on it? Or
Dragon Ball Z, not in particular.
there you
And
go.
I really already said because it is
One of the most iconic anime
iconic.
characters, whilst also having one of the most iconic anime villains.
Yes, yes, very true. I mean, I knew who Piccolo was, like before I even watched it.
Even Frieza, I knew who
I
Frieza
just
was.
knew the green guy.
Yeah, I
just
knew
knew he
who
was the
Piccolo
green
was
guy.
before watching. I knew who Frieza was before watching. I knew Vegeta before watching. I
No,
knew
I
Raditz
knew
before
of them,
watching.
but I knew so little about them.
Yeah, somehow I knew Raditz before watching. Explain that one to me.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
I didn't know young Gohan at all. I knew there was an old grandpa Gohan.
I'll tell you what, I didn't know.
I knew Roshi.
Okay, I didn't actually know
I knew
about
Bulma.
Goku and Vegeta because I thought they were the same person.
Oh.
Um,
They are. What are you talking about?
before I watched,
Gogeta.
I thought everyone was like the same person except the green guy. I knew he was different because obviously he was green. But yeah, yeah. Again, it's yeah, for all those reasons, that's why it's here. If no one's got any more comments,
No.
I'll move on to the next one, which is Naruto. Um,
Naruto.
with this one, I to be honest, I sort of ran out of ideas. That's pretty much why I was here. Um, but I mean, it is a good anime to get into, and a bit like Dragon Ball. A lot of people have gone into anime through Naruto, so it's proven to work. It is also something that I think, perhaps like Hunter x Hunter, it doesn't just dump the entire power system onto you. It sort
No.
of gets you to understand the world a bit first before going into the power system.
And even just the fundamentals of the power system before exploring all the weird shit it can do.
That's true. Like chakra control and hand signs and taijutsu, ninjutsu, genjutsu, and then eventually it's not till bloody Shippuden or Shippuden
Chakra natures become
era
more of
they
a
get
thing.
natures, yeah,
Which is already a thing previously, but we don't know about it as well.
and they
Which
go
is a
more
nice
into
touch.
depth with certain dojutsu and certain other
The
Kikki
world
Genkai
and
and
politics that occur in the world.
yeah, I mean in Naruto, the first pre-time skip, I should say, we didn't see as much of the world, but then in Shippuden we saw all this, and that's obviously when Kishimoto wanted to do a bit more. Whether that's when he started adding more to the lore.
Because they're
I
more
think the
adult
world's great.
characters, it also partially makes sense that as a child you're not going to do a lot of missions outside of the bloody hidden leaf village. Like sure you'll do some, but like it makes more sense for them to send like more adult and mature characters out into the world over someone who's fucking 12.
That's very true. And another reason I sort of put this on here is now I think Dragon Ball might have been in the same case, but I can't remember. But I definitely know Naruto was on Cartoon Network,
Yes, it
and
was.
that does two things. First, it is a bit of familiarity because if you watched it back then when it was on there, you would recognize it as being there. The other thing is I think that's sort of
I have a thing with that. Like the first ever Naruto episode I ever watched, I was on holiday and like the first episode was like a fresh live episode at the time, and it was the one where Sakura, Yamato, and Naruto were looking inside book, and that was on Cartoon Network. It was like a fresh live new episode, whatever, at the time. That's how long ago it was.
I think the other reason that sort of helps it is because it's sort of even obviously the moderators of Cartoon Network looked at it and said this fits in alongside Western media. This can slot in between shows like Ben 10 and
It's
whatever other shows were on fucking Cartoon Network. I can't remember at this point.
It's also one of those things where it's like kids have an idea of like what a fucking ninja is, and like it's something that I feel like it can open you up to the exploration a bit more of the East without it feeling like it's fully Eastern.
That's true, because it's its own world. So when you look at it, I suppose to some extent you might not be looking at it and thinking, "Oh, this is Eastern." You might be just looking at it and say, "This is just a different world." This is just a funny looking world.
And I know like Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is a very big thing in the West. A lot of it feels like it was inspired off of Naruto's world in that same
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they were. I mean, they were on around the same time, and
Yeah.
as a kid, I thought they were the same thing. I thought they were pretty much the same thing. So they definitely sort of have that similarity,
Yeah.
that sort of same effect it can have.
Yeah.
But another thing is also it is got that length to it if that's something you want. And again, it's one of those ones, and I should have. I mean, Dragon Ball I think is a bit shorter in general, but
It is. Yeah.
or Z, sorry. But with Naruto, I mean, obviously you don't have to go too far with it if it wasn't something you enjoyed, but I think it is something nice to dip your toes into to just have a look, and it's enjoyable. I mean, it's a good show. The ending's a bit whatever, but
But
it is an
that's most
enjoyable show.
shows. Let's be honest.
That's true. That's true. Most shows, endings are very hard to pull off. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
very very tricky, but especially when it's you got money involved,
Yeah.
because obviously, and I'm not saying this necessarily happened with Naruto, but just in general, you might have incentives to end it in a certain way,
Yeah.
and there
I
might be
mean,
external factors and such.
like there are some endings where it's like, okay, Death Note's ending. I saw like that was the only way you could really end that story with how Light kind of ended up by that endpoint. It makes sense why that ended that way. It's not alternate. It's not very satisfying whatsoever, but it's a pretty good ending. It's what I think it deserved. Dragon Ball doesn't really have an ending. Naruto's ending.
Well, no, Dragon Ball has an ending, but it has also got several sequels.
And I think with something with Dragon Ball, I mean, look, Naruto
It's
has
more because like
Boruto and
technically Z's ending was retconned.
Yeah, by
Yeah.
something that's not technically canon.
Eh, still part of the canon.
All I consider Dragon Ball canon is Dragon Ball and Z's anime, or just the Dragon Ball manga. Everything else is a sequel.
true, fair enough. Yeah, yeah.
But Beerus is actually also counted as Z.
Oh yeah, because there was a Dragon Ball Z movie by Toriyama.
Yeah, by Toriyama.
I do consider current Dragon Ball canon to include Super, but it truly, it's
that's the story he wrote. That at the time, this is what he did.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, Caleb.
Came back to it later.
I think most of these things have not as good endings. One of them I can't speak for because I honestly I haven't finished it. But I think with many of them, I think
the
one
one
good
you can't
thing.
speak for, its ending's good. I like its ending.
Which one was it?
It's Attack on Titan.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was SAO.
I mean, excluding like the other fucking the sequel sort of series. I'm not counting those. I'm sort of counting the
especially when you
main
have fucking
series.
Pokemon, which is never gonna goddamn end.
Oh, Pokemon's the other one, true, but
It does have an
whatever.
ending.
Like, it's still going. So I mean, it's like every week. I'm not gonna have finished it, so it's whatever. But yeah, and it's got different series. It's got different versions and whatnot.
Yeah.
But anyway, next isn't Pokemon. Next is Fairy Tail. Now, this is one where it's definitely I didn't choose it for the quality. Most definitely not. I've probably stated my views on this show many times.
Not enough, I
However, it is admittedly very simple. It is admittedly very easy to get into, and it is very familiar. The styles are very fantasy. Um, Many of the words have an English root or an Italian root. Fiore, I mean flower.
Yeah.
And
Filthy Italian.
the power system is extremely simple. Sometimes too simple, in my opinion, and it became much simpler as the world went on. And of course, the power system was a bit of a focus because obviously the entire like plot of the show, or I suppose theme of the show was it's a world where magic is not something that's unique. It's something that everyone uses. Um,
Unless you're in
but yeah,
Elves.
I just mainly put it on because of simplicity and ease to get into. And admittedly, if you're someone who doesn't really give a shit about story, um, and character development to some extent, then this is better for you. And there's if you do know, but seriously, like if you prefer just watching something for the feel goods and shit like that, then that is perfect for beginners and I suppose I don't want to say casual. I don't know. I don't like using the word casual, but people who just want to come in and have a look and then want to branch off from there into other things. I think it can work well. And admittedly, it's also
Yeah,
here because I ran out of ideas. But
I think it's relatively good at getting someone to get used to like the fan servicey tropes at the same
mhm.
time as well, whilst also being heavily strong and committed with like having so many different and unique characters. Not all of them are good. Most of the main characters suck ass, but you know, there are still things that you can enjoy about it, and just general things where you can get lost in the fraudulent world that makes it seem more lived in, which is actually a lie. Um,
Yeah,
Complimenting and also hating on the series at the same time. But
I
also,
know, I know.
if you want to get into it, and you want to have that serious notion, just skip everything and just watch the best arc of Fairy Tale Zero.
Precisely. That is that's still a fantastic fucking.
Yeah.
I, I'd even be tempted to just recommend that. Like to be honest with you, I don't know if
What?
you know if you. I can't even remember. I don't even think you need the rest of Fairy Tale to
You don't.
watch that.
You really don't.
It like it stands on its own. It's that's very good. That is a very good arc.
You really
But
don't. That's the best thing about it. You don't need anything to get into Fairy Tale Zero. You can watch it and it'll be fine.
I'll tell you what, this is probably the one that I was most hesitant to put on. But every other
I
anime I thought of, I'm like, for a beginner, nah.
I can
It,
understand for a beginner why this one can be good at opening up a world of possibilities to you and get you excited to possibly see more. Especially if you're someone who actually really enjoys the style of it and it helps you kind of get into larger shonen like Naruto almost. Yeah.
mm,
And
yeah,
One
yeah.
Piece and Bleach and Dragon Ball and Hunter x Hunter.
And it sort of has that, I suppose one could argue rather poorly, but it does have bits of everything to some extent. It has
Yeah.
things that you can see that other shows have, albeit they do it better, but you
Mm.
can see those aspects,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think can obviously ease you in. But to some people, I know someone who watched it and just immediately got turned off by it. And you know what? Looking back, I can fucking understand.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't know. It's there. It's there because it's again. I ran out of ideas to be completely honest with you, but that's
It's still
that's
not
the
bad.
best
Oh,
justification
okay.
I can give.
It's still a lot of good to it.
Yeah. But hey, I don't know. Not yeah. It probably out of all of these, it's the one I like the least. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
Because
Okay.
yeah, definitely if you're a person who is invested in more of a story, you can find better things.
Yeah.
Because there's like probably my biggest grievance with the entire series is the fact that there's no real goal in the series at all. There's no real thing or aim or thing. It just kind of flows along with the characters and a world that feels quite samey
Never really
in
felt
each
like it
place
was
that
going
they
to go
explore.
anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, and
There was a
admittedly, look,
mystery behind it, but the mystery wasn't as strong. Because there's no real investment in like trying to achieve a goal. I mean, Lucy's goal was what to join Fairy Tale. She does that in like episode 2.
yeah, yeah.
Natsu's goal is to
I'd
find.
wager that not having a direction doesn't particularly make a series bad.
Not
Notably,
But
necessarily, but it
it's how
also
it handled it. It is the fact that a character did have a goal and never actively did anything about the goal, and that was Natsu.
that's true.
okay.
And then you look at other shows, even if it doesn't have a really apparent goal like Dragon Ball, there is still personal goals
Mm.
that a character has, like becoming stronger. That's not
Yeah.
a specific goal that has a specific ending, but it is like there is a path there that I can follow, and events can play into that path. Meanwhile, at times I felt like certain arcs within Fairy Tail didn't didn't feel like they play that. I would have much preferred if, because of Natsu's goals or because of Lucy's goals, that maybe perhaps interfered at points. It's like with Naruto is a perfect example of
Yeah.
that, where like a lot of the arcs, the characters' decisions are influenced by where they want to become. Naruto's decisions, he does what he does because he wants to become Hokage. Sasuke does what he does because he wants to kill Itachi.
Mm.
It
Light does what he
goes
does.
in it goes in those
Yeah.
directions because of the character's motivations. Meanwhile, with Fairy Tail, I feel like it's not necessarily there. I mean, Natsu does do stuff to try and find Igneel, but
Yeah.
I feel like at times it's not as, it's just sort of to get in places instead of him sort of making decisions that feel like, like Naruto will make decisions sometimes that are actually wrong, but they match up with his goal. You know what I mean?
Like
He
him
won't.
confronting Tsunade, which is one of the arcs I appreciate
Yeah,
most about
yeah.
that. Like he has a whole idea and his goal, and the way he confronted Tsunade about like calling the Hokage a bunch of fools and whatnot, and how he reacted, and the ambition and drive he had to prove this essentially stranger wrong. That no, it's a noble thing. You don't need to do this and whatnot, and it changed just how characters look at each other and what the ideas and thoughts that one character might have for each other. But in Fairy Tail, it never really felt like anyone had a realistic goal or desire. And sure, that doesn't always have to be a shit thing. I mean, Sword Art Online, there was no real goal in a lot of it. A lot of it's just, your first is to survive, second is to save, and it just builds around the story of it. But if
Even
you're
that
going to
goal,
introduce a
played
character
into
with
it.
a goal, you expect more for that to be more a part of their character. Also, Lucy cries a lot.
I mean, Kirito's goal was like to survive, but his goal to survive and live and beat the game,
Mm.
and his overall character influenced him to go in a direction. It made him want to go off in his own and do this. Like Klein. Klein obviously wanted to survive, but at the same time, part of
He
his
didn't
goal
want
was
to do
to
it
ensure
alone.
the safety of his mates.
Yeah.
And it's what made his team, not one of them die, because he actually gave a shit about his mates and led them through. Meanwhile, Kirito was so adamant on himself surviving that to some extent he was selfish for quite some time during the game.
It's
So
partial.
that's actually he actually,
Yeah.
unlike Fairy Tail, he does actually have a goal that
Mm.
influences what he does in comparison to other characters that will do something different.
It's partially why I said just watch Fairy Tail Zero, is because there is an active goal that's trying to be accomplished, and even if you go and skip Fairy Tail and watch Eden Zero, they have a goal that they're trying to accomplish as well, and the
It's
goal
funny.
is established, and it does a great job at doing something that Fairy Tail was never able to do.
I like how I put Fairy Tail here for something it does well, which has been an anime for beginners, and it eventually just turned into us um, dissing Fairy Tail, which I find
Again.
quite humorous. Anyway, I think we should
There is a
move on
lot
to
to
sort of.
enjoy in that early bits of Naruto. Those early arcs are pretty well done, and helps to understand the characters and the main characters specifically, and explore. It was probably till after like the Loxus arc that things felt very off-putting at
Yeah,
times.
yeah, yeah. But I loved Thunder Temple
Thunder,
or Thunder Palace,
Thunder
whatever.
Palace, yeah.
But yeah, other ones. I thought you know, I will admit when I watched it, I did actually enjoy the
Yeah.
it for the most part. But it was once Tartarus. I fucking hated the Tartarus arc. Even when I liked Fairy Tail, I fucking hated that arc. And then once that happened, I began to become more I began to criticize the thing more overall. But anyway, this was supposed to be defending Fairy Tail again, but we ended up bashing it. So I think we should move on
Yeah.
before we complain about the show more.
You should move on.
The next show I put on this list is familiarity um, almost to the extreme because Pokemon is fucking everywhere.
Mm.
Um, and I just think that with it being everywhere and with especially the popularity of the anime specifically, like of course it's Pokemon, there's
Easier to
cards.
get into when you're younger, though. That's the only caution. Easier to get into when you're younger,
That is very true, and
especially later on. Early,
it
not
can be
early.
trickier,
Early Pokemon's actually pretty alright, even now, to just go and
but it
watch.
can be a bit trickier for some people.
Yeah.
I can understand how for some people it can be trickier because it is a little bit more kid oriented, kid
It
targeted, right?
has that American cartoon
I
aesthetic
watched
with just
there was
watching
a
an
new,
episode and not really relating to anything.
there was a new Pokemon movie that I watched and Lane showed me, and I fucking could not get into it at all. It was not. Pokemon's never been something for me, and that
Mm.
movie just could not resonate with me
Do
at
you remember
all.
what the
So,
movie was?
I forgot what the name was. I'll have to double check. Oh, fuck, I couldn't, man. Just not very good, in my opinion.
But yeah, I mean, I will admit that the later ones, and this is like I said before, this is one of the ones where if I recommended this, I will not recommend it as something that you would finish. I
No.
would simply recommend it as something to break the ice, and then you go off. You stop at some point to go off and explore some other things. And that's simply just familiarity. I mean, a lot of people know who Ash Ketchum is. A lot of people know who fucking Pikachu is, which is funny that probably more people know who Pikachu is than Ash.
I
Um,
don't find that
but
particularly funny. Ash is one character in one series, while Pikachu is everywhere.
but they still, yeah, I suppose.
Because
Yeah.
Pikachu's the mascot. It's like having Mario.
But I always sort of assume that whenever you see Pikachu as the mascot, it's Ash's Pikachu, more specifically.
Oh yeah,
That's how
definitely,
I've
definitely.
always
That's
seen it,
because
where
it's
it's
more
his.
characterized than any other
Yeah,
Pikachu possibly
yeah,
out
yeah.
there. Yeah, I
But
always think of Ash as Pikachu.
but yeah, I again, I mean, that's not to say that uh, Pokemon doesn't have quality. Of course, it has. There's a lot of quality within it,
And there are
but
some
it's not.
incredible movies. Take the first movie.
Yep, precisely. But it's not here because of the quality. It's more
No.
here for the familiarity and being able to putting someone into anime with something that's a little bit more familiar and perhaps something that people grew up with watching because it was on the tally at the time. You know, Pokemon was
It, it's
fucking everywhere back
it's
then.
one of those weird things
Still is.
where it has that Western anime feel of the cartoons where it's like each episode is something different, but also having an actual like progression and storyline also taking place at the same time with with Ash exploring, getting gym badges, and eventually going to the Pokemon League, whilst also catching Pokemon, and depending on where you are in the show, him having a different team or a different philosophy of how he's going to approach a certain battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is sort of interesting because I mean one of our mates that is not a big fan of anime. The most he's watched of anime is Pokemon because Pokemon Go came out, but he actually watched it for some reason, and the reason he was able
Also,
to do that is because of that connection with other mediums of Pokemon.
as well, it's just how big Pokemon is. It is very accessible.
Oh no, yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
Pokemon even have a fucking app called Pokemon TV where they will cycle through the episodes of each different series, so you can
Mm,
watch it and like
mm,
kind of partially keep up to date. You know, like a free-ish version of it.
yeah. So it's just yeah, and another great thing is that not only would it allow you to get into other anime, but it potentially could allow you to get into other Pokemon things because fucking Pokemon's it's a fucking thing within itself, you know.
Well, in the last what?
This,
In terms of this year and last year, we're essentially getting three games, three main-ish story games,
yep, yep,
which is
yep.
crazy.
And it's very unifying as well.
Mm.
You know what I mean? In the sense that you might not be necessarily a big gamer, but um, Pokemon games you might play a lot of because it's Pokemon. And likewise, if you're not big into anime or cartoons, Pokemon can be that sort of anchor you have, I suppose. Um,
Mm.
and cards as well, and manga and all that. So I think it
Yeah.
also has that sort of feature, that unrelated feature, I suppose.
Yeah.
The
However,
movie
if
I watched was Power of Us, by the way, from 2018.
Ah, I have that one.
but the old ones were good though. The old movies were good. They were.
I love the
The first one was great.
New Pokemon movies. I just can't be bothered with.
I need some pants.
You know, now that I think about it, Marianne and I actually do talk about the Pokemon movies in random conversations sometimes.
Yeah, she's the reason I watched Power of Us.
Yeah.
Watched it together.
Poor you. It sounds shit.
It was not very good.
It's like a 5 out of 10-ish kind of thing. Possibly
Yikes.
lower.
Yikes. Anyway, if there's no more comments for Pokemon, we're gonna move up
Yeah.
to all Blue Exorcist.
Which is something I feel like is such a you and me thing as well. Because we watched it in that early stage as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because so I should clarify something. The Blue Exorcist and the next one were the first two I put down, and then I was sort of struggling for a while, so I put some others down. But I was struggling for a while to put other things down. So at first I put Blue Exorcist because that was one of the first ones I watched. So much of the criteria I have for the lower ones, what didn't apply to it. It was just something that I had personally watched early on and quite enjoyed. But in general, it is very good. It has a focus on sort of more Christian religion, which is
a very
something
Western
that
thing.
which Westerners would be far more familiar with. The idea of Satan and priests and demons and exorcism and shit like that. Yeah. And that's I can often find that perhaps things like yokai and other Japanese myths can be perhaps a little bit daunting.
Right.
I mean, not so much, but I feel like take our shows, right? When people talk about vampires, a lot of the time you're not focusing on the abilities of a vampire, what a vampire can do, because most people know kind of what a vampire is. So at times when you watch certain shows, you might find it tricky because they're going to do the same thing. They're going to say, this is a yokai, this is a demon. And it's going to be like, what does that mean? Because you're not familiar with it. With Blue Exorcist, of course, there are demons, and of course, I think there might be some yokais in it as well. But because it has that Christian theme,
inspired spirits, I would say.
Yeah. Because it has that Christian theme, though, it becomes a bit more. There's a bit more of a handle, I suppose.
I mean, like there are a few characters.
Turbulence.
Like when we learn about like the sets of like this is the type of exorcist you can be. One of the types is literally just reading from the scripts from the Bible to attack.
Yeah, that's actually, I like that one. That was a cool one. Yeah. They're just reading
like
fucking words, and then all of a sudden the demon fucking blows up.
Yeah, you can be a knight, you can be a doctor, you can just have a
has a shotgun.
Yeah, or you can just read scripts from the Bible.
And then there's some people who just know how to do all of it, and they're sick as.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great little show. One thing I would say is a bit of a problem, especially with the anime, is it ends abruptly. The second season ends abruptly. Now the manga goes on, of course, but with the anime, I remember like getting up, watching the last episode. Okay, all good, and then getting up the next week, and there was nothing. I'm thinking, what the fuck? Where?
And then we find like a random web, like on one page of a website, like so far away, and we had to actually search for it. That's like, oh, it's been cancelled.
And it says, no more. Oh, fuck. Fuck. But yeah, I mean, it's great. It's a great little thing to be able to get into, and it, again, has a bit of that familiarity, but also it's a good show. It's interesting. And the characters are, I think, quite well done. Their relationships and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know.
Eins,
That's
fein, drei.
yeah. Um, yeah. There's not much else I have to say about that. That was rather a short one.
Yeah.
Next, this one is the purest example of anecdotal, because this was my personal first anime. And this is what got me into other shows. And I think, because especially because at the time I was one of those people that would look at anime and like I would think, what the fuck, and then I'd often make fun of one of our friends, Winston, for it, and then I just thought one day, why not? I'll have a look. I watched the first episode of Attack on Titan, and I thought, hey, this is pretty good. So I continued with it, and I think one of the things that got me was one, again, the familiarity, because it was sort of had a bit more of a German style, which of course I'm not German, but it's a bit more Western.
Well,
It looks a bit more familiar.
a lot of old school German things. Germany has a long history with England,
That's true. That's very true.
so there is that aesthetic of familiarity as well. Like a lot of like the English dynasty nowadays, even just like from Queen Victoria and no, from even the fucking King Georges are actually German.
Yeah,
To the
yeah.
point that King George the First spoke more German than English.
I mean, English is a Germanic language
Yeah.
as well. So, but yeah, I there was obviously that familiarity, but then there was also the thing that this massive thing picks up um, people and just eats them, and the cartoons I'd watched before, they didn't do that. Um, they didn't have someone being bitten in half, and I think that initially attracted me because it was something different. It was something interesting. It was something a bit more what is yeah, mature, I suppose. That cartoons here, or more childlike cartoons here, wouldn't really do, because uh, they don't want kids seeing that. But yeah, I mean, look, again, the reason it's here because personally for me, it got me into it, and despite me not having finished it, the reason I have not finished it is because I ended up getting distracted by other shows, and I think for an looking at it as an anime for a beginner, I think that it did its job perfectly, because despite me not finishing it, it's because it got me into anime that I haven't finished it. Because it has made me look at other shows and get distracted with them, despite me now being distracted by the Clone Wars. It's still other things still distracted me, and it's because I started with that. And also because there wasn't a season 2 at the time, so I couldn't watch more. But
Mm.
even after, there was just other stuff I had watched because of that, which again, that's why it's it, because
At
yeah, anecdotally.
so that just partially makes you sound a little bit old. At the time, there was only season one.
Yep, yep,
Season 2 didn't come out for another 5 years.
Yeah,
yep. Well, I mean, by the time I watched it,
yeah, but
it would have been well
like
after
I think it
it
came
finished.
out like a year, almost like a little over a year later from when Caleb watched it, the season two.
Yeah, but then I watched other shit and didn't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah.
But I still, even though I had never went back to it, I still always respected it for being my first, which again I appreciate, and yeah, it's something I would recommend to other people, because fuck, if I got into it and I got into it being at the, if I got into it having the um uh attitude towards anime I had then, if that was possible, then with someone else, I assume it would also be very, very much possible.
Mm. Alex,
Alex, do you have any comment on this?
Attack on Titan. I think it's for early anime. It's what you were saying before with you not seeing any other anime, see someone get bitten in half. It's a good one for people who think that it's for a much younger audience when anime or any animated content can be any number of age ranges, right? I think that actually absolutely has a good point. There's also the idea that I think it's incredibly rewatchable. There's so much more that'll happen later on that recontextualizes earlier moments in the series, and it's not so deep for our audiences who don't really pay too much attention to not notice. There's plenty there for viewers that pay enough attention. I wouldn't particularly say the first anime always, because for the same reason I put Haikyuu Demon Slayer on my hero on mine. It's just the what's the word? The way fan bases kind of get too attached and too addicted to certain ideas and series they get to first.
Yeah,
Attack on Titan is kind of
there's
big.
even some problems on my list with that. JoJo's and Full Metal, Hunter x Hunter.
Yeah.
That is very true.
I tend to avoid, and not so much. I very much consider putting Attack on Titan on mine as well. It's nothing much that you didn't already say before.
But here's the interesting part about it. We have someone here with a different type of history with Attack on Titan, and that's being me, who could not get into it in the beginning, and that was still back when there was only one season.
That's true. That's very true.
Part of the reason why I couldn't get into it is, I think, just the one. I think the anime style didn't work for me, and it still partially doesn't, with those thick, bolded lines that take me a little bit out of the world that's being like set up. But also, like, in the beginning bits, a lot of it was quite boring for me at the same time. And like I mentioned to you a couple times, that it only really gets interesting, and it really pushed my limit on the rule I had back then, which was 3 episodes I'll watch and then I'll make a judgment, which then got pushed up to 5 episodes. But Attack on Titan took 7 episodes for me to get into it, and that was something that I had only come across trying to attempt multiple times. And at the end of the day, I just think the medium didn't work for me, and it made me fall out of it, and I don't have as big of an appreciation for the Attack on Titan anime as a lot of other people do because of it. But then, when I first stepped foot in that world of the manga, it was very different for me, because everything, like a big part of the reason why I didn't like it in like the beginning bit was so different in the manga. You're starting with what got me into the story instead of all the random shit that happens in the background and the past that sets up the characters, which I found very interesting, and I found the layout and the style of the manga to be more enjoyable for myself. And I personally just couldn't get invested in the anime. As well as
that sort of...
As well as I do want to mention the idea of just because something's popular, it can put people off sometimes.
That's also true.
Which I think was part of the reason Attack on Titan put me off. Of course, back then, like, Attack on Titan was getting really big to the point it was starting to progress, and Season 2 started getting announced, and then no one would shut the fuck up, and people still don't shut the fuck up about it. Within reason, but still. Finding my own way to enjoy it was a big part of it for me. But yeah, that's my take on that.
I mean, I sort of had a similar thing with One Piece. You know, I couldn't... for the life of me, I could not get into the anime.
Yeah.
I found that shit boring.
You tried.
But as soon as I started to read the manga, that's when I became a bit more interested in it. I don't know why precisely I found the manga more enjoyable, but I know what you mean, that sometimes, just the anime can sometimes be a bit...
Which doesn't particularly mean the anime is bad. It just depends on how.
It depends on the person. This was completely a me thing. I'm not saying the series is bad. look at me now. I think the series is very good, but I feel like my connection with the anime isn't as strong as a lot of other people's is. That's what I'm saying.
I remember it was funny because I remember once him sort of saying in some way at some point that he liked Aaron Yeager, but and I hadn't been keeping a track of sort of what
Love
he was
her.
doing
It's my favorite.
and what you were sort of um like liking at the time. And I had still assumed that you didn't like Attack on Titan. So I'm like, hang on a minute, what the fuck? Where did that come from? Um, but yeah, yeah.
That was back like early on when I'd finally caught up with the manga, and like the manga
Yeah.
was like just up to like the time skip. The takes
Definitely.
place, and Aaron Yeager is just a different character from all his experiences. He's just this different being altogether that I fell in love with. The nihilistic bitch that he became.
But yeah.
We can
If
move on.
anyone's got no more comment for Attack on Titan, we shall move on.
Nothing else you haven't already said.
Horror. I don't know. Horror is a big aspect of it.
Oh, also the anime. May not resonate with everyone, but Wit Studios' take on the anime and the adaptation, especially Sawano's soundtrack, do make for a fantastic adaptation, in my opinion.
Mm.
So for an anime, it's not just the story; there's a lot more aspects to it that there is to enjoy. Which is, I think, an adaptation is incredibly important for a series, for an anime, not just the story with slideshows and decent voice acting. Like it is an animated show.
Slideshow with decent voice acting. I've seen a couple of those, Alex. You have too.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't recommend any of those. I'd recommend actually well-made series.
Yeah.
Fuck, you Sword Art Online. It has a fantastic anime, production-wise.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, if we're moving on,
Yeah.
Star Wars Visions. Now,
Here's this one.
here's why I put this on. Because with my criteria when it came to familiarity and simpleness to get into, as well as the ability to be an introduction to certain aspects, in my opinion, I thought Star Wars Visions literally nailed all of that criteria perfectly. Because on one hand, it is extremely familiar with it being Star Wars, which is not only an extremely popular franchise, but unlike say something like Pokemon, it is Western. It comes from the West. So and it also starts off live action. It's something that is more integral to cinema. So unlike Pokemon, it's not just something that resonates with the younger generation. It is also something that resonates with practically the entire. Not the Pokemon can't, of course, but I feel like Star Wars tends to do that with a wider age gap. A wider age. As a result, I think that perhaps certain people, especially people who are not at all familiar with anime, would find it very a bit easier to latch on to Star Wars Visions because it has that similarity, because it's that world that they're familiar with, but it's being portrayed in a different light. On top of that, the fact that each episode is a different studio,
Most of them.
yeah.
9 episodes, 7 studios.
Yeah. How many of them are different studios. It allows you to see the different styles of anime. It shows you, because one of the problems you can have is if you watch an anime for the first time, especially, and it's if someone says uh, if someone says I want to get into anime, often then if you point them to something, they might look at that as a sort of paragon, I suppose, where they'll look at that and say that is what all anime is. Meanwhile, with Star Wars Visions, that is clearly not the case. The first one is this black and white samurai fucking episode. Meanwhile, the next one is this cunt fucking singing with a lightsaber. Like they are two very different things, but it shows you with these different studios what they are capable of, and each episode sort of does that. Each episode sort of shows you, okay, anime can be this, anime can be that, while also showing you how unique it can be and how crazy it can be, especially when Trigger gets involved. But um,
There's one of on top of that. You said different studios, but it's 7 studios, 9 episodes. So 2 studios did it twice, Science Saru and Trigger. But what's interesting with that is they're not even the same style. Any of those.
precisely,
Right.
precisely.
It's not about so much. I mean, yeah, it is about different studios and different styles, but it's also emphasized on the creators behind that. So even though you can recognize some of Science Saru's content, one of the other episodes of Science Saru you wouldn't probably be able to recognize. Same with Trigger. One very fucking obviously is Studio Trigger,
Yeah,
but
the
the
other
other one
one
not so
less
much.
so.
And it's just the different style, the different themes they're going with, and it really plays along with a lot of them.
I mean,
And
what? You can continue. Finish your sentence.
yeah, Ethan spoke about recommending specific anime to specific people. You could show them Star Wars Visions and tell them, and they will tell you what they like, and then you can recommend it based on that.
Hmm. And it can, and if they go through this and say, I didn't really, none resonated with me at all, then you might say, okay, well then maybe it isn't for you. But and of course, and that doesn't mean it's the be all and end all, because of course there is an aspect where someone might enjoy things that have continuity or are serialized, in which case that is obviously not going to fulfill that,
No.
because then all the episodes are not connected. Um, but it will be able to show you these different styles, and it's something that I've heard a lot where people say I don't like this style, and I find that interesting because again they've looked at it and said, oh well, all anime is the same, but again, not always the case, and it's not just artistically, it's also narratively as well.
It's why I go case by case with a lot of shit. It's like not every television is set up the same way. Sometimes I can get annoyed by just the way the show gets edited or put together. Can piss me off or make it more interesting at times. Like having something that's based in comic books and have the idea of like the colorways going back into like this print based medium and swapping to a different panel, and that's their transition, which at the
That's very
time
true.
I thought was a very interesting concept to do.
It's interesting because I actually just recalled that a while back on the radio. Well, I don't know what channel it was, but on the radio, someone was talking about Star Wars Visions, and I was thinking, what the fuck? Like, you wouldn't hear of an anime on the radio
No.
necessarily, but because it's
But
Star Wars, it gets talked about, it's mentioned,
yeah.
and I think that is something that sort of sort of represents my point that it is going to be something that for
I
some people, and for some people, they might just watch it just because it's called Star Wars. It might
Yeah.
not even be the fact that they're willing to watch it because it's Star Wars. Sometimes they will watch it just because of that.
The main
I mean, that's sort of what I mean. I didn't watch it just because of that, but if it was just something, just a random thing called Visions, and it was set in a different world, I probably wouldn't have known about it. I probably wouldn't have just dropped everything and watched it. But with this, I did because you know where it was set.
I think one of the main points I was gonna go after is more the fact of timing of when it was released, as well as obviously the fact that it's 9 different stories that take place, because obviously this isn't just a new concept taking something from the West and creating an anime out of it. I mean, Marvel did it a bunch of times, but I wouldn't recommend
The
them.
Matrix did it in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Halo has it. Halo did
has
it as well.
yeah. But I feel like it just works so much better on in terms of just timing of when it came out, to be able to be something that people can get into and dip their toe into, as well as at that
Yeah.
point accessibility to streaming services have risen to a far greater degree than ever before.
Yeah, without Disney
Yeah.
Plus, no one's gonna go to.
No.
Doubt someone's gonna go to the cinema and watch a Star Wars,
Yeah.
or, well, maybe they will now. And especially today, that anime is more accepted. But the Animatrix, you probably wouldn't have even heard of it. But it's 6 creators coming together to create stories inside the world of the Matrix. I haven't watched it, and it's got my favorite anime director in there, and I still haven't fucking watched it. 'cause I don't
Halo
care.
Halo Legends is a lot like Star Wars Visions.
I
Yeah.
constantly call Star Wars Vision Star Wars Legends.
Yeah.
Just because of Halo Legends.
Yeah.
I don't know
see,
why.
See, they got
but-
to anime first, and Star Wars got to television shows first, and now Halo's getting a television show. See.
True. No, the trailers. People have not been happy about the trailers.
Well, I don't know. It's just going apparently more off the books. Is what I hear.
Yeah. To be honest, my biggest problem is the voice.
For who?
Like the Master Chief's voice. I understand, but at the same time, his video game voice is so fucking iconic. I liken it to the fact that they don't use James Earl Jones or someone who can imitate him well to do Darth Vader's voice. To me, I liken it like that. His voice is that iconic. If you played the games and you hear Master Chief with a different voice, it's like, that's not.
It's
That's
not
not
my
right.
master.
Anyway, that's Halo. That's a different fucking
Yeah.
franchise. But yeah, again, Halo Legends did do it, and it's that sort of similar thing. Again, I wouldn't. The reason I would put Star Wars Visions instead of Halo Legends is because Star Wars fucking far more well known than Halo is.
And to at least say that the episodes are really fucking good.
Yeah.
I don't know about the quality of the other ones, to be honest. I don't know why I said that.
But yeah, and for me, and even for me, I mean, some of the episodes, like the fucking lightsaber singing one, I was not a fan of that. But that's sort of the thing where I wasn't a fan of that episode, but then other episodes were really good, and some of them were just what the fuck, what the fuck is going on? Why are they on a Star Destroyer now? Why are they
Trigger's funny.
light speed lightsabering fucking shit? I don't know, but I did think it was good
cool.
because it allowed them to do whatever they want with it.
More of that
And
in the guard.
It also gave them enough freedom to be like, we're not restricted by the Star Wars universe, so we can do what we want and we can tell our own stories within that.
Yeah.
Which I think allows people to potentially see what it's capable of and what these studios, and I think that's why I brought up studios more so, because in the end of the day, these studios are the same studios who make other anime. So when you watch Star Wars Visions, you can dead ass go, I like this episode, so I'm going to then go watch something that this studio has created because I already know they can make stuff of quality, right? Or
And studios are
these
far
studios have
far-
made this, thus I
creative.
know other shows will also have this quality. Other shows are also capable of doing this. It's not just some fucking nobody making it. It's studios that have made other shit as well that you can go and explore and take it from there. Which me personally, I think an anime for beginners has to act as a jumping off point as well, which is personally why I put Star Wars Visions here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I have to say about Star Wars Visions. It just matched my criteria fucking perfectly. As soon as I made my criteria, I'm like, fuck, how can I not put this on here?
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, that's why it's there.
Well, now we can move on to Alex.
Yo.
Finally, I can take a piss.
But well, you don't know what the first one I'm talking about is.
I'll see.
It's Death Note. But like
Oh, there
we've
you
already spoken about Death Note, so I'll just skip it.
Yeah.
I spoke about everything I wanted to.
But the second one, Caleb can also comment on.
Let's have a look, see at the stream. Okay, so yeah. Is he going to? No.
I assume so.
Good for him. All right, so here's my 3x3 9 anime for beginners. In my opinion, what the fuck is that Parasite image?
I typed in Parasite. I saw that image. I had to.
Right. Okay. So we've already spoke about no. So I'm gonna talk about Code Geass Lucia the Rebellion. I bring this one up largely because of the the politics and the themes behind it. The idea is that it's about oppressed people inside Japan or Nippon, because fuck them, against the Britannia, right? And I think we're vaguely familiar with what fuck Britannia is, right? We get this idea of not a dystopia, but a all-controlling authoritarian environment, and the need to break free from that, which is themes that have existed within the Western stories before, but it's taken by a Japanese way. It's the perspective there. It's the way the writing is from there. It's the we get a lot of a bunch of not filler episodes, but like some other questionable quality episodes of Code Geass with a lot of Japanese common comedy themes inside there as well. But they
And
have
chasing a
fucking
cat.
mechas making a yeah. They one chases a cat with the fucking helmet on, and another one they
For the
make.
whole
I think
episode.
that's there was another one they make pizza.
Oh, that's the best one. That's my favorite.
No, like the mecha makes the pizza.
Yeah.
It's no, it's there's still obviously flaws, things about it that um I wouldn't expect someone new to animate to immediately accept.
The
But
difficult situations people get put in and put into this world, and even one thing I really enjoyed about like just the power system as well with the Geass is the fact that it only works on someone once.
yeah,
Mm.
for a new person into they can look at this as a political thriller, a political sci-fi that would hopefully immediately grip them. I wasn't immediately gripped till halfway through the first season, to be honest.
I think what I got gripped by is the fact that it set up a very interesting world with the with like the whole history and the storytelling that took place of like this is what the world has become, and also falling in love with Cece.
For me, it was the incredibly difficult decision from Lelouch with Shirley and the initial arc, not the initial arc, but the last arc with Mal.
Mm.
That's what really sold this series for me. So I think uh, the themes of rebellion and authoritarian governments and the way people have to rise up and change their own fate
Yeah.
is the reason I put this on my list.
Even just the way like Lelouch appears in the beginning as like that zero figure can partially remind a Western audiences to someone like Batman.
Hmm.
This shadowy figure like who's just like almost a myth kind of, but can also be a detriment to the corrupt society that surrounds them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's we all imagine a person who's willing to make the change, but none of us are, and that's something many audiences can work with here.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't have too much. Well, the way will be describing the rest of these is what will hopefully appeal to a Western audience and why I put on the list. Not so much not so much what's so good about a series, but why it is for this. Because
as well
I
as
don't want to just
as
talk
well
about
as
favorite anime.
just having like mechas without it being just like such a big point to it or like a main focus of like people you gotta fight in these mechas because they're mechas, but I enjoy the fact that there's more people fighting over it just being a mecha brawl out like other mecha series can be.
Well, in this world, they are the weapons of oppression. They're weapons of rebellion to fight back. And
And
it's an interesting concept.
and I think just generally just like a lot of characters are very strong, like Callan and her little story, and like she's a very endearing character. I feel like a lot of people can kind of enjoy and like. Or you have other characters like scientists and whatnot, or the big the pompadour man who marries the fucking Nelly Elvue or something, whatever her name is. And just like the way people take care of each other, even in like a struggling world and whatnot. It's quite interesting, as well as just the general logistics of like how a royal family might work with a king, who is essentially just a slut. I will
and
slut shame the king.
the mysteries as well later in the series. Really grip audience, and it's available on Netflix as well.
Man's a stick.
What's up?
The man's
Man
stick.
is a stick.
Who's stick?
Man. All of them.
All
They're all
of them, yeah.
sticks.
They're all sticks.
Right.
They're all
Their
very skinny.
proportions are very weird. Which
Yeah.
was like one of the things I feel like you do notice first in the anime is like the proportions are very lanky.
Yeah, it'll also get used to a more unique animated style that
Yeah.
Sunrise went with here,
Yeah.
and it's an anime original as well, so it is it's
True.
contained in and of itself, which is always pretty good.
Gav, got anything to say?
No, it's pretty good.
We got the
Pretty
Caleb
pretty
seal of
good.
approval. We can move on.
So I put Wolf Children on here because of there are a lot of things that reoccur in Japanese media that I wanted to highlight. Wolf Children, in my opinion, really highlights the which you'll see in a lot of media in Japan, the way parents are handled and the way what's the word? Parental themes are handled throughout some series,
Yeah.
and Wolf Children is a great example of that. In my opinion, it's a woman, single mother who has to take care of two half werewolves, and the struggles that go along with that. And that's really just the premise of that. You get to explore some of the not the usual Tokyo or more populated areas of Japan, but more the countryside as well.
Yeah.
And how Japanese families have to live with all these hardships and money issues with children that may not always be accepted with others, be worried about, which can be translated through like if you had like a what's the word? Let's use the word neurodivergent child, for example. An autistic child. Basically, ones which you're not so sure if they could fit in. They might be a bit weird, right? I think for Western audiences to see these themes and how Japan does it to, I think, the best it can, Wolf Children is one of the peak examples of that, which is the reason I put it on my list.
Fair enough. See, you went for a very different thing to me putting a movie on my list.
Yours is just an icon for the ages.
Mine's an icon that I feel like a lot of people can enjoy and get into. You chose an aspect of a more psychological nature that I don't feel like gets appreciated in Western media, but it can really show you what Japan is capable of.
Exactly.
Yeah, and by all means, like, I mean, Wolf Children is higher on my movies list than Akira.
When Akira got in cinema again for like a 4K viewing, I jumped at that fucking opportunity. Fucking spectacular. Legendary film. Yeah, that's a quick reasons why I think Wolf start. It's also Mamoru Hosoda. I think that's his name. He creates a lot of really good animated films. Akin to Ghibli. I've forgotten them, to be honest.
I'll have a look.
Mamoru Hosoda movies, please. I've completely forgotten what other things you do, but I like them. The Boy and the Beast, Summer Wars, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. Apparently, he was in a One Piece movie. These are all fantastic films. I haven't seen Summer Wars, to be honest, but his stuff is, I think, really good. I'd also recommend like Makoto Shinkai. They're not exactly the best story-wise, but it's a lot of people's first anime movie was Your Name, and it's fucking beautiful.
Oh, My Neighbor Totoro.
Yeah, with Makoto Shinkai films, you can see just how beautiful the medium can be, even if the films aren't always the best. It's not to say they're bad; they're actually really good films, but the appeal of them come from just how beautiful and stunning they can really look. And that's why some of his films are so popular today. And also, there's some that emotional touch to it. If I didn't choose Wolf Children, I'd probably go with Your Name or Weathering with You. Just a Makoto Shinkai beautiful
that's
film.
the One Piece film he did.
Yeah, Baron. I haven't seen it, but yeah.
That's actually one of the better One Piece films.
Yeah, because they let the director, the creator, do what they wanted with the story. Maestro Oda is great, but he to One Piece films is what I think executive producers to what happened to Boba Fett is. Right, they put in what they knew as the One Piece story, but I think if you do what you do with Star Wars Visions and let creators take this idea in their own direction, because it's not going to be canon anyway,
Yeah, I love
might
this,
as well.
though.
It could be good, yeah, and he's got the creative control over that, so that's pretty cool. I do. There's if it's not in canon, right? Let creators create things. This is what's so good about fan films. Some Darth Vader fan films that are absolutely fucking spectacular. Right? It's creators doing creative things. That's off topic. That's all for my Wolf Shoulders topic. Next is Parasite. This is downright one of the best anime I've ever seen. Best single anime I've ever seen. It is straight to the point with its themes and ideas. We've all seen something similar to the ideas and themes that Parasite will give off. It's a idea of what it means to be human, what it means to be a monster, and these characters that exist in here have to struggle with, let's say, a venom type symbiote, and these symbiotes just want to eat and kill. Right? They're not human. They don't have these emotions, and they need to be tamed by these human hearts. But as the series progresses, that line tends to blur what humanity is truly capable of to make them seem like monsters, and these monsters that come in start to learn what it means to be human, and they can gain more of a conscience than the humans at some point. The thematic ideas that exist in this story is one of the easiest to translate through Western media. If you walk into Parasite, you'll be able to immediately pick up these themes, and it does not beat around the bush with them and can do some pretty amazing things. The one with the parasite that has the child, fucking incredible moments in the series. I chose Parasite here because the themes of it are not only very apparent in the series, but is also something that Western audiences can easily understand and get behind. And it's 24 episodes, pretty good, and on Netflix.
Yeah.
So easy peasy there. Any comments?
No. I was just thinking, like, back when I watched it, like, I can recognize it's something that's relatively very good, but at the time when I watched it, I had just watched Monster.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the ideal time because you know me and Monster. But I can still recognize it's a really good series, and I don't think it gets talked enough about. And you know what? At the end of the day, this is probably the one I agree with you most on your list to introduce someone who might be new to anime into anime. This is the one I think of, like, yeah, that's actually a really good idea that you just don't feel or see enough of in like a certain like general list is this kind of stuff that just gets kind of hidden because it might be like it's done, it's had its time to shine, and we're in a new age. But like sometimes some anime just don't get that shine that they deserve, and I feel like it is a really good anime to watch early on. And you did not watch this one early on. I know this for a fact.
A bit late to
To
this
hear you
one.
talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Parasite, very good. Highly recommend for them. And I would even recommend it to non-animes.
Yeah.
It is just that good. This one is very much an anime. The one I'll talk about next is Narugami. This, in simple concept, is like the Japanese pantheon of gods in a modern setting, because we follow one of the gods, and how faith and the idea of these Japanese deities exist in this world. It can be, you don't have to know what it is, what these gods represent, but that's the idea being you can walk into this and see how this creator has written a story based entirely around these gods, and you can pretty much get a crash course into them. You can learn more about Japanese
Customs
gods and demigods and customs and religion.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic crash course into that, and even if you don't care about that, it's just a really good fun story. With the fucking a god of fucking poverty and his fucking dumbass swords, and this girl who just fucking following along the way. 24 episode, 2 seasons. It's a really fucking enjoyable series anyway.
And relatively good openings.
Very good openings. Fucking Hello Sleepwalkers, fantastic. it's a very, very modern take on on Japanese religion, and I think it's
Yeah. Even
really
in
good
the
opening
picture, you
to
can see them
Japanese
holding a
ideas.
fucking iPhone.
Yeah, the fucking got a fucking poverty holding a fucking phone. He's like fucking
What's this?
I don't know, is that it's some fucking clover apple bullshit. Pretty sure they're falling from the sky right now in that image.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty good gag.
Mm.
That's the reason origami's on here. It's even if you don't care about.
Even I think like when it starts to develop other gods that we might see, like season 2 really develops Bishimon more as a character,
Oh yeah.
not just like a threat or an antagonist type character in the story.
Yeah. That's the reason I put my origami on here.
Yep. Fair enough.
For the next two, it's mostly due to creators like inspiration. Next one here is It Invaded. I've spoken about it on the stream before. It's one of my go-to anime.
What's that?
I have It Invaded is similar to Psychopaths, is a crime cop series, is detective based,
Yeah.
but they use a form of technology where they can see or look deeper into the crime than before. This is based off of, I know it's very similar to this the movie with Jake Gyllenhaal called Source Code, which is fantastic. Not fan, it's a pretty good fucking movie. Source Code. The creators of this anime took 4 years making it. There was only like 12 people on the crew, taking heavy inspiration from Western cyberpunk crime kind of ideas and bring it into a detective story. And it's because of the idea, because of the inspiration media created by Japanese artists and animators is why this is on my list. Because of that inspiration, it'll be a lot easier for people who've not watched any anime to come into this with no need to understand everything that's happening because they've seen these ideas before. That's the big idea I'm going with. A lot of these things on my list is like Caleb said, familiarity. The concepts and ideas they'd already be familiar with, and then seeing stories based on that by creators from overseas, which I think is really important.
But I also need to preference that it does not always work. It doesn't always work. No.
No, not always.
Like one of the I have a big connection with crime shows and television from the West, and like I don't really care all too much about it Invaded. But I can understand like if it's your first anime you can experience it for the first time, it's a very different thing.
Yeah, a lot of as I said before, different people interpret and experience anime in different ways.
Yeah, because maybe you're looking for something different, and like for me, I just felt like it did have that real Western kind of detective feeling to it that I wasn't interested in looking for, and that's why I like Psychopaths a little bit more for that cyberpunk, because it has more to it with the dystopian future as well. Yeah.
Where Invaded's a lot more modern day. Oh, gotta take the bins out. Anyway. Oh, you changed it to Sunday nights. It's my bin nights.
Bin. It's not my bin night.
Yeah. For similar reasons I spoke about with Invaded is the reason I put Cowboy Bebop on here. Now, for the same reason that Caleb put Dragon Ball Z on his, being that it's fucking proven to work. Cowboy Bebop was one of the most popular shows to exist on Toonami. The Toonami section broadcasting thing, I forget words.
Yeah.
In the early 2000s, and really introduced American audiences to anime, and they don't even realize it was anime. It's just more animated material for more mature audiences. Right. Cowboy Bebop was one of the first anime to get translated and put into American television outside of fucking Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z.
I actually remember Cowboy Bebop more for the dub than anything else.
Yeah, and it's got a fantastic dub as well. It's it's created by Shinichiro Watanabe, who seems to fucking simp over Western cultures and ideas, which you can see in almost all of his or half of his media at least. With your Space Danny Carol on Tuesday, and especially Cowboy Bebop. He takes, like you mentioned, space opera and sci-fi
Mm.
and not entirely always Japanese characters in extraplanetary worlds, and explores human connection, and seems to be well ahead of
The
his time with
close, I'll say
gay and
this.
trans characters being main what's the word mainstays in the series for several episodes.
I will say, like, one of the things I think, in terms of connection to a Western media when it comes to space with Cowboy Bebop, the closest thing I can really think of is possibly the show Firefly.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's like if Firefly was set more in a futuristic setting, because obviously, like, Firefly is more about people going out into space and starting new colonies on these essentially empty planets, whereas Cowboy Bebop already has filled up those empty planets and is now just living in this. This is what the universe has become.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about these brokers fuck people trying to find some form of work, and then their own morals and ideas can get in the way of finishing a job.
Yeah.
It's honestly a fantastic decision over at Toonami to bring Cowboy Bebop over to a Western audience, because it's done fucking wonders for mainstream recognition for anime in the West, and also the people in Japan see more stories outside of everything they always see every fucking year.
Plus, each of the crew feels like a different kind of character. I mean, Jet Black feels very Western inspired in terms of the way he like acts.
I
And
mean,
moves,
it's literally
like,
called
just,
Cowboy Bebop. It's the Cowboys.
yeah, well, but like his background is a police officer, detective kind of like background, and he really feels like that Western kind of character in this midst of a chick who doesn't know her own past, and like this one of the problems with the future. A kid who's just insanely smart and doesn't really know much about anything else, and even just the like relationships and connections that he can make through online means. Like, we knew about Radical Edward long before we even saw Ed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess Spike as well, just being who Spike is, a man who just wants food. And to find a woman. A particular woman.
Yeah, the series doesn't at all focus on almost entirely ignores any form of Japanese culture in its creation.
It really does, yeah.
And I think it works for it. And he obviously made up for it with a full-on samurai anime later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the creator here, Shinichiro Watanabe.
It's one of his best,
great...
most iconic works, and it was one of his firsts, which is always something that's always impressive. When it's one of your first works, to be something so astoundingly great, and to transcend just even the medium of Japan and anime, is something very different. Like, I will hear on occasion, even just like with people who haven't watched a lot of anime, them still make references to Cowboy Bebop, whether that just be going out with a bang or things like that.
The series itself serves wonderfully with the inspiration that's taken, and Shinichiro's ideas for it definitely meshes much better with the Western audience. Thus, it's the reason I've put it on this list.
Which is fair enough.
Oh, and you mentioned it was on a lot of online lists. I don't look at those shits. I don't.
No, I looked at them to see what they put on it. Yeah,
I won't let anyone else's what they think is that's fucking.
Yeah. I mean, I put Full Metal Alchemist full knowing that it was on lists. I'm just interested to see what the idea of other people have about what they believe anime for beginners should be, and then I made my own one.
Okay, next one is Sword Online, but we've spoken quite in detail about that just prior. So the last one on my list here is Seven Deadly Sins. We spoke about before when we talked about Full Metal, the concept of the seven deadly sins in the Bible and Western influences. This takes place in a fantastical version of pretty much Britain, United Kingdom
It is
up
Britain.
in Europe. It's not. It's a
No, I
magical
mean
world.
the actual shape of the country is Britain.
Cool. Uh, and it's plays on the characters' ideas and themes around the seven deadly sins. Each one of them represents something that all Western audiences can be familiar with. Most of them are able to name at least half of the seven sins, right? Taking place in Britain, pretty much.
Mm.
Which I think we all know what the fuck Britain is.
Yeah.
Most Western audiences would.
Like each of their sins relating to something that occurred in their past, adding to why they're called that particular sin.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest one I can probably say is Barnes' sin of greed. And yeah.
With the also this is available on Netflix. I haven't seen all the seasons, and I'm not the biggest fan of the series. It's a series that the creator has very clear. He's still a Japanese creator. He still puts in a lot of the same tropes and cliches you'll find in a lot of anime, but he's taken the setting and the myth of it outside of
The Arthurian myth as well.
yeah. It takes out of what you'd usually see in your yokai or such that you find in a lot of anime, like I mentioned with Noragami. For some reason, every time I think yokai, I think of an anime called Kimono Jihen, which is just the kid children of certain yokai,
I
and
think of Yokai
how
Watch.
the stories. Yeah, I don't want to think of Yokai Watch, so I actively avoid it. And this is one of those stories, but with this is the reason it's on this is because, like those stories, it takes those ideas and takes it in its own direction. But at least this time, it's ideas that Western audiences don't need to be familiar with prior; they already are.
One thing I think that I found very interesting was more the fact that the creator of the series struggled with mental health, and he put that
Because all
into his
those are in
series.
this series.
Yeah, because each character has their own like mental health
Yeah,
struggle.
and mental health is important because everyone who watches anime, and we'll get into anime, has a condition. Yeah, fucking that's why it's important in this topic. Because anime for beginners, you need to be fucked in the brain to watch anime. That's why Seven Deadly Sins is the right anime for you. This list, by the way, was entirely unordered. Just whatever came to mind. My main recommendation for West audiences is not Seven Deadly Sins,
No.
but it is up the top here. And the last one.
Mm.
It is the way it's been ordered. Seven Deadly Sins is here because of familiarity with some concepts. In a taken in direction read by a Japanese author. So you can understand the ideas, the cliches, the tropes that exist in anime, while with a familiar setting.
Yeah.
Thus, Seven Deadly Sins.
Like I will say, like one thing I do want to kind of create an honorable mention part about it, because this was one of the things where it's like, if it was dubbed, I could definitely recommend it, but because it's not, I don't want to recommend it, and that's Vinland Saga.
No, Vinland Saga is dubbed.
It is dubbed, because like I don't feel like the dubbed as accessible.
No, it's not. It's not on fucking Amazon Prime.
Exactly, that's why it's not as accessible, which is annoying.
But it's dubbed.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the dub.
It's the whole like accessibility thing of it, because I feel like that's a relatively one that's like it's set in a world that is relatively known to a Western audience, being Vikings, and Vikings in media even like have gone popular. Like I've seen like Netflix stuff, like their like Viking show is like on their like top 10 thing consistently now for some reason. I don't know why. I haven't seen
That show that came out like a few years ago.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Just interesting.
Yeah. So that's all I wanted to talk about with these series. For half of these before, I've jerked them off enough in this stream and prior. I wanted to mostly focus on why they are good for beginners and not just go on a tangent about why fairy tales are shit anime.
Well, I don't know what you're on about. Any other thoughts about like things that you can just think of that like you might that someone who's not really into anime might enjoy? I just thought about.
I also avoided bigger series,
Yeah.
Which is why I didn't touch Hunter x Hunter or One Piece. There's a lot of influences from all over the world, and
Yeah.
doesn't even touch a Japan arc till fucking now. But
It's not even
Yeah,
like
so-
a modern Japan. It's just Edo.
so there's those I could have discussed. There's a Blade Runner anime.
Yeah.
It's coming out now, and there was a Blade Runner 20-minute short film. If you watched 2049, they referenced it, which is pretty fucking neat in my opinion. It was 2022 Blackouts. I don't remember. It was alright. We could have mentioned some of those, which it's not that, but that was not so much for getting people into anime. More so, it is for
I mean, Assassination
It's just a cool
Classroom.
animated version.
Assassination Classroom would be something I feel like is relatively good to get someone into anime.
Most shonen.
Yeah, that would be
I'd
good. Yeah.
a lot of it's not the toughest themes for people to swallow, so they can really sit back and enjoy the story. So your Naruto's, your Bleachers, your One Piece.
Yeah, I'm not
Fairy
gonna
Tails,
sit
your
here and go like, oh, your first series should be Grand Blue Dreaming. Nah. I mean, if it is, yeah, you're a fucking crazy psychopath.
Sorry, what happened? My dad walked in.
You know, yeah, My Little Witch would be a very good one.
Yeah, that would be alright. I can understand though. It's a bit too
Yeah.
My Little Witch. Hang on, what? You mean Little Witch Academia?
That's the one.
Fucking My Little Witch. My fucking
Oh.
little.
Forget.
Close
My
enough.
Little Pony.
Sounds suspect. Close enough.
Yes, it's My Little Pony, isn't it? My Little Pony's an anime. If Mashal had an anime.
I'm talking about manga that people can get into, which we haven't. But yeah, there's anime is incredibly diverse of themes and ideas and tropes.
Yeah.
Many
Which is why you shouldn't be like a person who goes out there and says, "Oh, it's an anime." Nah.
I could have brought up Black Clover. That's very got a lot of botanical kind of themes to it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
word
A lot of
makes sense.
botanical kind of themes. I also kind of.
There's one character.
I say European themes because a lot of the other countries feel like others kind of. There's like some that feel German and Russian to me.
How dare Tabata like try and go out of his way to not make like a Japan-based series, but he's put one character who seems to be from Japan who has a katana and made him.
He's clearly from Japan. He's just from Japan.
He's got a fucking
his country
katana.
is literally called the Land of the Rising Sun.
Yeah. It's just so. It's just how dare you make the best character? Like, come on. Oda did it too with Zoro.
And they're both voiced by Christopher Sabat.
Wherever that man goes, Chadness follows.
I know. It does, doesn't it? Either way.
All Might.
Wow, true.
Sadness follows. What do you say to
Wow.
that?
There can be exceptions.
There we go. That
I
being
mean,
said,
Timer's dad. I mean, let's be honest.
Thomas' dad is a fucking chat.
completely off topic from this. In My Hero Vigilantes, they're trying to, at this current point, trying to get All Might's attention to save the day. I've never been so excited to see All Might before.
Oh, and the
in my life.
Vigilantes, All Might's amazing.
I cannot wait to see All Might in Mid Vigilante to just come in and save the day, because that's the idea. He needs to be this hero that comes in and saves the day. He is the Superman, right? He needs to be that symbol of hope. I feel that in Vigilantes. I need him in Vigilantes to come in and fucking do something.
I mean,
So,
so many Dragon Ball characters are voice staffed over Sabbath.
Yeah.
The dad who owns like the place that Okabe lives in is voiced by Sabbath.
the landlord.
Yeah, the landlord. He was voiced by Sabbath.
Alright, I lost my lid.
So many great characters, but this is just become. Well, we forgot the best one. What is it? The one that is from the first chapter / first episode in the very beginning of One Punch Man. Vaccine Man.
Fucking Vaccine Man.
That's the
Can't
one.
believe they got Sabbath to voice a Piccolo clone for 7 lines.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Why not? Either way, that's it for this stream. Enjoy watching shit. That's all.
That's all.
That's all.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.